Chapter 252. Although in the eyes of many, the flower merchant of Sai was a typical gangster without any sense of social responsibility, that was not the case. Because he was the boss of the underground world, the flower merchant paid more attention to rules and order. In his eyes, this was one of the necessary conditions for the survival of the underground world led by the Sai River Plain. Back when psychedelic Saburo was still around, those trashy organizations were selling anesthetics everywhere. Flower merchants didn't care at all, because those people who bought and took drugs were a bunch of scumbags who didn't deserve any sympathy. They bought and took drugs from psychedelic Sanlang, but in the end, they only harmed themselves and made their deaths more ugly. It had nothing to do with the flower merchant. He was not a police officer, so he could not care about this kind of thing. But this time, the paper anesthetics that appeared in the underground market were different. This paper anesthetics would cause one's strength to increase exponentially after consumption. Moreover, it would cause one to lose consciousness and become violent and aggressive. It was like turning into a mad dog. Normal anesthetics would be fine in any way. At most, it would cause those trashy people to die faster. But if this paper anesthetics were to be widely circulated, the entire society would be in chaos. The meaning was completely different. When the society was in chaos, the underground world would be in turmoil and pressure from all sides would increase. The first to suffer would naturally be the group led by the flower merchant and Ryuto. Therefore, as the boss of the underground world, the flower merchant would definitely not allow this to happen. Ryuto naturally understood this logic. Therefore, he took a sip of wine and sneered, "Where did these things come from? Tell me, I'll deal with it." Ryuto knew that the flower merchant must have discussed this matter with him because he had found the source of the paper anesthetics. However, the other party might have a strong background and he could not deal with it himself. He needed to borrow Ryuto's power. "Have you heard of the name Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company? Yingjili? Never heard of it. Did they do this? I can't be sure at the moment. But after my informant infiltrated yesterday, he quickly lost contact. Most importantly, this pharmaceutical company is backed by a company that you are very familiar with. They are very suspicious." "A company that I am very familiar with? Could it be the Heavenly Eye Group, or rather, the pharmaceutical department of the Heavenly Eye Group? This pharmaceutical company is a company under them." "I see. It's you again, I am." Hearing this, Ryuto smiled as if he had met an old friend he hadn't seen for a long time. He had heard from Rue Hui that there were several large drug research bases under the pharmaceutical department of the Tianmu Group. Presumably, this Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company was one of them. If the paper anesthetic named Hell Butterfly was really developed by the Heavenly Eye Group, then this Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company must be the culprit behind the distribution of the paper anesthetic. There was no doubt about it. However, just as the flower merchant and Long Do were discussing the matter of the paper anesthetic, the battle in the iron cage not far away was gradually coming to an end. In the metal cage, the Thai tiger Park In-young's right leg was lifted up with his hip joint as the axis. His hands were clenched into fists on the side of his body. When his thigh was slightly raised, his joints were pushed forward, and he kicked towards Dunya. His movements were smooth and beautiful. Since this Taekwondo master had his balls removed a few months ago, he felt that his kicking movements had become smoother. His crotch felt light without any obstruction. This feeling was like being stabbed by a needle. Although Park In-young's kick was fast and ruthless, it wasn't a big problem for the current Dunya. The girl's body tilted back slightly, and at the same time, she stomped on the ground and used the reaction force of the ground to quickly retreat backward. She avoided the opponent's ferocious kick by a small distance. If it was a normal battle, Dunya would definitely take the blow head-on. However, before coming to the River of Sai fighting arena, Ryuto had deliberately told her to get used to dodging with nimble movements and try not to take the blow head-on like him. The reason why Ryuto could take most of the attacks head-on was mainly because he had Copper Skin Mastery and Iron Bone Mastery. Even bullets might not be able to penetrate his body, so he didn't care about most of the attacks. Dunya, on the other hand, was different. Although she was born with high muscle density, This level of defensive ability was not enough to support such a head-on fighting style, at least not when it came to sharp weapons. Especially when she was fighting against those despicable fellows in the fighting arena. Like hiding knives in their butts, steel wires in their wrists, sulfuric acid bombs in their mouths, and so on. If Dunya was used to taking the blows head-on, sooner or later, she would be unlucky to be hit by these tricks. Moreover, Dunya's body was petite, and the Saito-style Palea martial arts also included the ground shrinking technique. It would be a pity if she didn't train her dodging ability properly. Therefore, it was time to start correcting her fighting style. However, not knowing if it was because she wasn't familiar with dodging yet, when she finished dodging backward, Dunya's petite body staggered a little, as if she had lost her balance because of her impatient dodging action. She actually dodged my attack at the risk of losing her balance? It's over. After discovering this situation, how could Park In-young, who had decades of combat experience, let go of this opportunity? Therefore, this Thai tiger immediately took a step forward, swiftly lifting his leg over his head, a powerful downward chop aimed directly at Dunya's head. The power behind this chop was extraordinary. If it were to land, it would at least cause a concussion and faint on the spot. An ordinary person might even die. Very good, I fell for it. But at the instant Park In-young lifted his leg to chop towards her, Dunya's body tilted to the side like a ghost, appearing at the side of Park In-young with an incomprehensible movement pattern. Furthermore, her fist landed right in the middle of his body. Looking at her fluid movements, she didn't look like someone who had just lost her balance. Obviously, that scene was just a young girl's acting. Furamaki-style martial arts. Tiger Fall. The swift and violent fist landed directly on Park In-young's chest. The ultimate skill, Tiger Fall, that she had learned from Ryuto exploded on the spot, causing this Thai tiger to suddenly stop in place. Following that, the young girl leapt up, her palm aimed at Park In-young's face, as if she wanted to blast his brain out. However, Dunya's Tiger Fall was still not practiced enough. The time she stopped was too short, causing Park In-young to raise his arm at the last moment to block this palm that contained boundless strength. Bang! Gotcha! When this seemingly light palm landed on Park In-young's arm, he felt as if his arm had been chopped by a battle axe that weighed over 100 kilograms. A sharp pain immediately seeped into his bone marrow, and a crisp cracking sound could be heard from his arm. What kind of strength is this? Is this little girl a monster? After fighting in the arena for so long, Park In-young had already trained his arm, which was specially designed to withstand attacks, to be incomparably tough. Even if he was hit with a metal rod, it would be difficult to injure him. However, Dunya had only used a simple palm to shatter the bones in his arm, causing him to lose all ability to fight. Not good, not good. If this continues, I will lose. How can I lose to such a little girl? He immediately retreated a few steps, and when he reached the edge of the iron cage, Park In-young looked at his limp right arm, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. It wasn't that Park In-young had never lost a battle before, but losing to such a lowly was something he could never accept. Thus, he decided to sell his soul to the devil. Thus, when this man was huddled at the edge of the iron cage, he secretly took out a small piece of paper from his sleeve pocket, and stuffed it into his mouth. This action was extremely subtle, and on the surface, it looked as if he was wiping the sweat from his mouth, so it didn't attract anyone's attention. Plop, plop, plop. When that small piece of paper entered his mouth, Park In-young could only feel his heart beating like a drum. His body slowly emitted a dense fog, and a strange heat rose from every pore on his body. At the same time, Dunya once again charged towards him, and a small fist hammered towards the abdomen of this Thai tiger. Umph! In the next moment, Park In-young's eyes turned red. He actually extended his undamaged left hand to block Dunya's thunderous punch. What? When her fist was blocked, Dunya couldn't help but widen her eyes. Although this punch didn't look special, the force behind it was incomparably terrifying. How could a taekwondo expert like Park In-young, who mainly fought with his lower body, receive it with a single hand? This abnormal situation naturally attracted Ryuto's attention, and when he saw Park In-young, the rogue analyzer on his eyes gave him the corresponding information. Originally, this Thai tiger character's attributes were like this: name, Park In-young; age, 38 years old. Attributes: Intelligence LV2, Vitality LV3, Courage LV3, Insight LV3, Charm LV2. All of a sudden, his aura changed. His personal attributes became like this. Name: Park In-young. Age: 38 years old. Attributes: Intelligence LV1, Vitality LV4, Courage LV5, Insight LV1, Charm LV1. This abnormal change in his body's attributes, Ryuto had seen the exact same situation on Pang Sanlang. His vitality and courage had greatly increased, while his intelligence, insight, and charm had greatly decreased. This also meant that he was in a state of near insanity. In other words, the current Park In-young probably used an anesthetic similar to the Hell's Butterfly, which resulted in the exact same situation as Pang Sanlang. Chapter 253. He. Ha 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 ha. At this time, the man in the iron cage suddenly let out a burst of laughter that sounded very creepy. The arm, which was obviously thicker than before, suddenly rose up and firmly pressed down on Dunia's fist, making it impossible for her to move an inch. Oh my God! What's going on? Unknowingly, many parts of Park In-young's body also underwent the same changes, causing the audience to realize that something was wrong with this guy. His height had obviously increased, his neck, legs, and even his torso were obviously thicker. Moreover, his muscles began to bulge out of his clothes, giving the impression that he was suddenly blown up by the wind. Oh! As expected, this kind of anesthetic has really seeped into the battle arena. After seeing the strange changes in the figure in the cage, the flower merchant slightly frowned, but still sat in the same place without moving, as if he was not worried about the situation over there. Before this, there hadn't been any cases of fighters using anesthetics to fight in the arena. However, that didn't mean that it wouldn't happen in the future. For example, Pu Renyoung had used that kind of anesthetics today. Actually, if one thought about it carefully, this was to be expected. After all, the biggest benefit of the Hell Butterfly was that it could make people stronger quickly, and it was a natural attraction for fighters who fought in underground fights here. This was also one of the reasons why the flower merchant wanted to get rid of the anesthetic as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the fighters in the battle arena started to use anesthetic in the middle of a fight, then there would be no way to continue the competition, and it might even become a showcase for the Hell Butterfly. Flower merchant, is it okay for me to make a move here? After confirming that Park In-young was showing signs of using the Hell Butterfly, Ryuto slowly stood up from his chair. He clenched his fists, and the joints on his body crackled like beans, clearly a sign that he was ready to make a move. Under normal circumstances, Park In-young would not be Dunia's opponent, but with the Hell Butterfly buff, that might not be the case. Especially since they were fighting in a cage match, the narrow space was suitable for those with monstrous strength. For Dunia, it could be said that she was in an absolutely disadvantageous position, and if left alone, something bad would definitely happen. As you wish, this is no longer a normal match anyway. The flower merchant made a please gesture to Ryuto, then raised his wine glass and looked at the cage. At this moment, Dunia, who was in the cage, was in the midst of a very difficult struggle. Her slender fist was being held by Park In-young's hand, which was as hard as a rock. No matter how hard she tried, she could not break free, and it was really annoying. In all her life, there were not many opponents who could be on par with Dunia in terms of strength, or even stronger. This was the first time this silver violent bear, who was used to using strength to crush her opponents, felt inferior. But even so, when she felt that Ryuto was walking towards her, Dunia shouted without turning her head, "Don't interfere. I haven't lost yet. This guy's situation is not right. Can't you feel it?" "I know, but even so, this guy is still my hunt." Dunia originally wanted to say, "This guy is also my hunt." But before she could finish her sentence, her petite body suddenly rose into the air. In an instant, she was more than 2 meters in the air. Oh! The audience suddenly screamed in surprise, because the mutated Park In-young actually lifted Dunia up with one hand. Furthermore, he lifted her above his head. Generally speaking, lifting a petite loli above one's head was not a difficult task, but the problem was that Dunia's body weighed more than 200 kilograms, and her strength was also very strong. This was fully demonstrated in the previous battle. But in front of the mutated Park In-young, Dunya was as light as a piece of paper. She was lifted above her head with one hand without any resistance, and then violently smashed into the ground in front of her. Boom! Accompanied by a strong muffled sound and an explosion, it sounded at the same time. Dunya's body directly smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. Even with the naked eye, one could see the scene of crushed stones and dust flying everywhere. Beautiful. But even so, Ryuto slightly nodded his head. This was because he could clearly see that when Dunya's body was smashed into the ground, she had promptly contracted her muscles to minimize the impact of the smash, causing her to not lose consciousness. So painful, scoundrel. After quickly adjusting her body's condition, Dunya hurriedly rolled to the side, barely dodging Park In-young's stomp that was enough to create a huge crater in the ground. With your figure, when dealing with such a big guy, you have to aim for his knee joint, and first deprive him of his mobility. Seeing that Dunya seemed to want to deal with her opponent alone, Ryuto, who was standing beside the metal cage, reminded her. Although Dunya did not reply, she quickly rushed forward towards the mutated Park In-young's huge hand. The huge fan-like claws that were filled with immense strength swept past, sweeping off a few silver strands from Dunya's forehead. However, the young girl was already beside Park In-young, and her elbow hammered into the monster's knee. Ryuto had also used this tactic in his battle with Pobo Saburo. The bigger the enemy, the more obvious the weakness of the knee joint. This was especially suitable for a small person like Dunya to launch an attack. When Park In-young's knee bent, his entire body unconsciously bent forward in a half-kneeling position. Dunya took advantage of the momentum to step onto the inside of the metal cage, and with an exquisite triangular leap, she was directly above the man's head. The young girl's slender body was light and graceful, but when her two palms pressed down in mid-air, the momentum was incomparably vast. Like a solid mountain, it pressed down on the back of Park In-young's neck. Saito Ryu Palea Art 1,000-kilogram rock fall. As Dunya's palms pressed down from mid-air, they pressed down on the back of Park In-young's neck. Air currents surged from her palms, and at the same time, there was a crisp sound of something being crushed. Plop. When Dunya landed on the ground, the dust had already settled. Park In-young's tall and sturdy body fell forward like a soft noodle, and did not wake up again, breaking the enemy's pivot bone from the back of the neck. Impressive. I seem to have underestimated her. When Dunya used this 1,000-kilogram rock drop, Ryuto couldn't help but widen his eyes slightly, because this was indeed an extremely effective killing technique. The human neck was originally an extremely fragile and fatal weakness, and this 1,000-kilogram rock drop was a technique that focused all of its power on one of the neck joints to break it. As long as it landed, it would be a one-hit kill, and definitely not a hidden technique that could be used carelessly in a match. Such an ingenious technique coupled with Dunya's super-strong physique, when her body fell from above, even if Park In-young's neck was as thick as a water buffalo, it would still be broken under this pressure. It had to be said that Dunya was able to grasp such a complicated technique in a short period of time to the point where it could be used in a real battle. This showed that she was really a martial arts genius, and her talent in this aspect was not inferior to Saito. The winner of this match is Silver Violent Bear, Saito Dunya. At the same time, the referee, who was scared half to death by Park In-young's strange behavior, finally regained his senses, and let out an excited and hysterical roar. She actually won? I'm not dreaming, right? Just when everyone saw the huge iron cage rise up, and the petite girl walked out of the iron cage, almost everyone was shocked by this shocking scene, and their scalp tingled, and their body trembled. Even when the enemy had obviously used some illegal methods, he still didn't waver at all. In the end, he relied on his exquisite skills to complete the fatal kill. This was the victory of faith, this was the victory of courage, this was the victory of martial arts, this was the victory of the lowly. So the surrounding audience kept roaring like thunder, and even their hands were red from clapping, and their faces were red as they gave great respect to this little winner. Dunya! Dunya! Long live Princess Dunya! This is actually the result of a fighter in the first match. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Looks like there will be a storm in the arena in the future. Ha ha ha, Good news, very good news. But no matter how much the surrounding audience cheered, Dunya didn't even look at them, and didn't even bow to pay respect, but instead went straight to Ryuto. How is it? She proudly stuck out her chest, and excitedly laughed. I'm not as bad as you think I am, right? Not bad, I underestimated you, I'm very sorry. Ryuto also reached out and rubbed the little bear's head, and his hand felt as smooth as silk, and his nose could smell the fragrance of vodka. It was hard to imagine that such a cute little loli could actually break someone's neck without hesitation. After the dust of this match settled, Ryuto brought Dunya back to the florist's office. And those three guys are... But just as Ryuto stepped out of the elevator, three familiar figures appeared in front of him. The three of them were wearing the same trench coat and sunglasses, and they looked like they didn't walk the path of the common people. It was obvious at a glance that they were different from the normal people on the surface. Back to the topic. The florist also explained in a timely manner. This time, the mission to investigate the Yingjili pharmaceutical company is quite dangerous, so I tried my best to find a few helpers for you. I don't think you need me to introduce these three, right? Indeed, I don't need you to introduce them. We've been through life and death with this little brother, right? In this slightly dark underground passage, the leader of the Amon clan, Amon Ichi, slowly walked over and extended his hand of friendship to Ryuto. Chapter 254. In Tokyo's underground world, there were many dock dwellers living in the dock. Many of these dock dwellers had even met Ryuto before, which was to say, they had chased after him and Dunya. For example, the three Amon brothers standing in front of him were known as the world's #1 assassin family. The eldest of the three, Amon Kazuyoshi, also practiced the tomahawk assassination technique. He specialized in using a tomahawk to assassinate. The second brother, Jiro Amon, specialized in the submachine gun assassination technique. He had a miniature submachine gun in his hand that could kill gods and Buddhas. The third brother, Amon Sango, was even more amazing. His rocket launcher assassination technique subverted the concept of assassination and turned it into a battle technique. But in Long Do's opinion, the founder of the Amon clan must have been seriously ill. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taught his three apprentices to be like this. It was a complete disgrace to the Hitman clan. But he still smiled and shook hands with Kazuyoshi and said with a smile, "Seeing the three of you, I feel that you are very reliable." Although the occupation of the three Amon brothers and their style of doing things was somewhat different, it was undeniable that the strength of these three Amon brothers was very strong. Other than Boss Ichiya, both Jiro and Sano had killed Ryudo once. That kind of professional assassin's sharp sense of smell, agile hands, and shameless assassination techniques were indeed hard to guard against. "Ah, aren't you that tomahawk uncle?" Just when Ryuto shook hands with Kazuyoshi, Dunya also recognized this tomahawk uncle. "Yo, kid, I saw your match just now. You played really well." At this time, Kazuyoshi turned to Dunya and nodded with a tone of praise. Normally, Kazuyoshi looked very kind, but when she remembered the night when he chased after Ryuto and Dunya with 2 tomahawks, Dunya couldn't help but shiver. So she quietly asked Ryuto, "Are these 3 guys okay? They chased after us for a long time." "Don't take it to heart." Ryuto reached out and patted Dunya's head. He smiled and said, "Being an assassin is just a profession. In essence, we don't have any enmity with our targets." Although Ryuto was indeed assassinated by the Amon clan before, he didn't feel that it was a grudge. After all, assassins were like this, they would kill whoever paid them, just like a tool. The person who had offered a bounty on Ryuto was the deputy head of the Heavenly Eye Group. Secret Department, Misty Ghost. That guy was already dead, so there was no point in mentioning this matter again. Immediately, Jiro Amon walked over from behind and said with a smile, "Well said. As expected of the new leader of Tokyo's Jaido. You're really broad-minded. It's been a pleasure working with you this time." Sano, who once used a rocket launcher to blast Ryuto into the sky, also nodded. Seeing that the team that attacked the Yingjili pharmaceutical company had finished gathering, the flower merchant said to the four of them. Now, my people will send the four of you to the outskirts of the pharmaceutical company. This time, your mission is to find out the truth as much as possible. If the paper anesthetic really came from there, raze that damned place to the ground. Hearing this, Long Doe sneered and added another sentence. That's right, flatten that place, don't even leave a piece of the wall for those bastards from the Heavenly Eye group. We have to let them know that the underground world is not their garbage dump. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Flatten that place. Don't even leave a piece of the wall. Suddenly, the three Amon brothers also began to shout. They didn't look like the legendary assassins at all. Instead, they looked more like a group of hooligans who came out to loot. Although, that wasn't too far from it. But seeing that Ryuto was planning to go with the three Amon brothers to check out the situation of the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company, Dunya on the side started to panic. She quickly asked, Wait? You four? What about me? The flower merchant said to the little princess, You can stay in the Sai River Plain. There are a lot of fun things to do here, or you can continue to play in the competition. No, 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 I want to go with them. Why are you making me stay? Are you looking down on me? It's okay, flower merchant, take her with you, I will look after her. Just when Dunya was arguing, Ryuto took the initiative to hold Dunya's hand and agreed to take her with him on this dangerous mission. After all, the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company was the territory of the Heavenly Eye Group, and the flower merchant's informant had already lost contact with them, so there might be unpredictable dangers there. But so what? At least from the Iron Cage competition just now, Dunya's maturity, determination, and strength all exceeded Ryuto's expectations. She was no longer a little princess that needed to be protected, but a companion that could fight side by side. Ryuto now thought so, and this was the greatest respect he had for Dunya. Okay. Seeing that Ryuto supported her, Dunya's face lit up with a smile. Seeing that Ryuto also agreed to Dunya's participation, the flower merchant couldn't say anything else, and could only personally send the 5 people outside to an inconspicuous, even a little dirty-looking van. I wish you all good luck in martial arts. When the van was about to leave, the flower merchant standing at the back nodded to Ryuto and the others. Don't worry, starting tomorrow morning, those messy paper anesthetics will no longer exist. Ryuto also nodded to the flower merchant, and then reminded the driver in front to drive. The group of people majestically drove to the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company in the suburbs. The vast majority of pharmaceutical companies were built in relatively remote areas. Especially pharmaceutical companies under the Heavenly Eye Group, because they did some unpresentable work, they didn't dare to build a factory in the downtown area. Not long after, the small van arrived outside a large factory 20 to 30 kilometers away from the suburbs of Tokyo under the cover of the night. It was now late at night, and the moonlight in the night sky provided an inconspicuous light source, and the building in front of them that was surrounded by a 3-meter-high iron fence was only dimly lit. An ordinary factory in the wilderness, if one didn't know that this was the so-called Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company, then most people who pass by here would have this impression of this place. When the 5 of them arrived at the 3-meter-high iron fence at the edge of the factory, Amon Sango directly walked over and squatted down with his back against the fence. He reached out and made a lifting gesture. Ichiya and Jiro behind him understood and jumped over one by one. With Sango's help, they reached out and grabbed the top of the 3-meter-high iron fence. Do you want me to lift you up? Seeing this scene, Ryuto communicated with Dunya with his eyes. No need. The girl shook her head. Her body quickly sprinted forward and jumped up. With a light jump, she grabbed the top of the fence and flipped inside. Although Dunya's weight was more than twice that of an ordinary person, her movements were still as agile as a kitten. Especially in the dark, she was especially agile. After entering the factory, the 5 of them immediately followed the surrounding walls and sneaked toward the factory not far away. Not long ago, in the dirty van, Ryuto and the others thoroughly looked at the company map prepared by the florist in advance. They had a basic understanding of the environment inside. With the cover of the night, Dunya tried to move as quietly as possible while breathing at an extremely slow speed. At the same time, she looked under her feet, afraid that she would step on something that would make a sound. Not long after, the three of them arrived at an area with many surveillance cameras. If they wanted to enter the factory, they had to go through this area. But the second son of the Amon clan, Jiro Amon, signaled everyone to stop. He took out a small special computer from his pocket and began to hack into the factory. Oh, this guy is actually a hacker. As expected of a professional assassin organization, he's really multi-talented. When Jiro Amon finished hacking into the factory, he stopped all the surveillance cameras at the same time. He made another hand gesture, and the five of them sneaked into the factory. At this time, because it was already night time, the doors and windows of the factory were tightly shut. However, there were a lot of guards patrolling around, and they could vaguely hear the sound of boots on their feet. But of course, these guards were no match for the group of professionals from the Amon clan. Just when the five of them arrived at a corner, there was a clear sound of footsteps coming from the corner. At the same time, Amen-e also rushed over. He reached out his hand and covered the mouth of the guard with lightning speed, and then choked him unconscious on the spot. The whole movement could be said to be so smooth that it was breathtaking. Oh, amazing! Is this a professional-level infiltration? It seems like they're not just some hooligans who only know how to use tomahawks, submachine guns, and rocket launchers. Following the Amon clan as they sneaked into the company, Dunia felt like her horizons had been broadened. It was as if a door was slowly opening in front of her. However, when the five of them arrived at the corner of a corridor, Dunia suddenly frowned. Sniff? What's this smell? Dunia's body was naturally very strong, and her five senses were also much sharper than ordinary people. Her delicate little nose sniffed a strange smell. This smell was similar to the smell she smelled from Park In-young's body when he was drugged. It was a strange smell that was mixed with a lot of strange smells. After smelling this strange smell, Dunia unconsciously walked towards the wall where the smell came from. Then she reached out her hand and pressed on the wall. Voila! Along with the sound of a mechanism being activated, a secret door suddenly appeared on the wall. Dunia's body involuntarily fell into it. Chapter 255. Never in her wildest dreams did Dunia expect that there would be such a strange mechanism on the wall. This was clearly the interior of a modern company, but why was it like the legendary ninja's room? Pressing the wall with one's hand would cause one to flip over. At this time, Dunia was about to turn around and say to Ryuto and the others, "Come and see what's going on here." But before she could say anything, she had already fallen in. She couldn't react at all. What the hell is this? The moment she fell in, the originally flipped wall immediately closed from the inside. Dunia's body slid down like a slide. When she was sliding down, Dunia instinctively reached out and grabbed the wall next to her, trying to stop herself from sliding down, but the wall next to her was slippery. There was no point to stop her falling. Whoosh! Just like this, the girl was like playing on a slide in the park. She quickly slid down from this secret passage, until she fell on a soft cushion. After Dunia completely disappeared, Ryuto and the others also realized that the little princess actually disappeared while walking. Dunia? Where is she? Suddenly, Ryuto glanced around in confusion and frowned slightly. Because Dunia was walking at the back of the team, Ryuto didn't keep an eye on her situation. Just now, everyone only heard a slight mechanical sound, then the girl suddenly disappeared. Ichiya and the other three also quickly walked back and searched on the wall where Dunia disappeared. There seems to be a secret passage here. The young mistress must have fallen into it. It seems to lead to some underground space. After knocking on the wall, Jiro knocked out an obvious hollow movement from one of the walls. It also solved the mystery of Dunia's sudden disappearance. There was a special mark on the map that the florist got before. There seemed to be an underground building under this company. It should be the nest of the Chenmu Group Pharmaceutical Department for some illegal research. Because of this, it seemed that there were many secret doors in this building. The secret door that could directly lead to the underground building from the building on the ground could make it convenient for the group of researchers to come and go at any time. Then let's follow the secret passage. In theory, we should be able to catch up soon. Originally, Jiro wanted to say, "We should be able to catch up with Miss Dunia soon." But before he finished his words, there was a sudden loud alarm around them. Beep beep. Beep beep. Beep beep. Beep beep. Not sure if it was because of Dunia's movement or because the group of 5 stayed here for too long. In short, the surrounding alarms suddenly sounded. There was also a burst of chaotic footsteps in the corridor not far away. At this moment, Jiro hurriedly pushed the wall, but the wall did not move. It seemed to be designed to lock from the inside if an accident happened. Well, now we are in big trouble, Humph. Looking at the group of armed guards rushing out of the corner not far away, Yaman Ichi couldn't help but snort coldly. In that case, let's just kill them. After all, they are in the basement. Gotcha. Speaking of this, Amon Jiro took out his dual submachine gun from his trench coat, Ichi also took out his dual battle axe, and Sango carried a small rocket launcher on his shoulder. Although the Amon family's stealth skills are indeed very professional, this is not their favorite assassination method. Like Ryuto, the best assassination method of these 3 top assassins is to break in openly and kill all the enemies in sight. Dunia, don't let anything happen to you, or I will have to kill myself and start all over again. Just as Ryuto and the 3 Amon brothers rushed into the group of armed guards and started killing, he was thinking about Dunia's current situation. But for Dunia, her situation wasn't that bad. At the very least, it was much better than Long Do's situation. She didn't have to be pointed at by hundreds of people. After Dunia landed on the other side of the chute, her body fell on a soft cushion, and then a small dark room appeared in front of her. What the hell is this place? Dunia looked up and saw that the chute she fell on has already closed. Obviously, it is impossible for her to go back the way she came. In desperation, she could only walk towards the door at the end of the small room and carefully open the door. After opening the door, Dunia saw several narrow corridors. In front, left, and right, there are a total of 3 paths. The end of each path is dark, just like the underground tunnel Dunia went through before. At this time should men on the left and women on the right, lowly in the middle? Thinking that she is still a lowly, Dunia walked towards the middle path with her head held high. Although she doesn't know where this place is, since it is the enemy's nest, she has to walk out with her imposing manner. However, at the end of this underground tunnel, in the large underground research room, a researcher in a white coat was hurriedly pushing open the door in the depths of the research room. "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" When the researcher quickly pushed the door open and walked in, the head of the pharmaceutical department of the Heavenly Eye Group, Hades, who was originally looking at the information in front of the computer, raised his head and looked at one of the researchers in the underground base with a dissatisfied gaze. Yomi is a middle-aged man with light yellow pupils like a snake. Due to overthinking, the hair on the top of his head has long fallen out. However, the hair around his head is still there. At first glance, it looks like a chicken's nest on his head. However, the reason why he was thinking was not because of his duty as a researcher to think about how to save people. Instead, he was thinking about how to break through the limits of trash like humans. Many years ago, Yomi was once a famous professor, a big shot in the field of biopharmaceutical engineering that was considered worthy of the Nobel Prize. However, for some reason, one day he suddenly abandoned everything. He left behind a letter and disappeared without a trace. He never appeared in front of the public again. And in the letter that Yomi left behind, she wrote, "I've learned one thing in my short life. The more I study science, the more I'll discover that there's a limit to human abilities. Unless I surpass human abilities." It was a sentence filled with deep meaning. Of course, no one knew that the reason why Huang Quan left the medical world was because he met a woman. He met a woman who had the same vision as him. She believed that humans were as weak as trash, and she hoped that she could make humans stand up. Just like that, under Iam's invitation, Yomi became the head of the pharmaceutical department of the Qianmu Group. Over the years, he used his top-notch ability in biopharmaceutical engineering to make countless superhuman drugs. As for the Hell Butterfly that was developed not long ago, it was a relatively successful batch of drugs. It was also a batch that Yomi was slightly satisfied with. However, tonight, Yomi's office was suddenly pushed open by a researcher. That person said in a panicked tone, "Lord Yomi, not good, there are intruders." Intruders? If there are intruders, just arrange for the guards to deal with them. Why are you panicking? Although he was usually only responsible for research and didn't care much about other trivial matters, Yomi also knew that there were hundreds of guards in the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company. Although these staff members looked like ordinary guards on the surface, they were actually well-trained mercenaries. Their combat strength was so strong that it wouldn't be a problem to send them to the battlefield in the Middle East. No matter how many ordinary invaders there were, it would be suicide. Unexpectedly, the researcher swallowed a mouthful of saliva and reported in an awkward tone, "Lord Nether, the guards can't stop them at all. Those people are about to reach the basement." What? The moment he heard this, the chicken coop on Yomi's head almost stood up. Are you kidding me? What are the guards doing? They can't even stop a few people? Those intruders look like monsters. There. What are they doing? They are chasing after our guards and beating them up. Our people have been completely defeated. They have begun a frantic and disorderly retreat. When he mentioned the scene he saw from the surveillance camera, the researcher's face was a little pale. Am I dreaming? Forget it, let's leave first. Hearing this, the corner of Huang Quan's mouth twitched slightly, but she still quickly sighed and stood up, preparing to run. No, this was not running, it was a strategic retreat. In the case of an enemy invasion, Yomi, as the head of the Heavenly Eye Group's pharmaceutical department, naturally couldn't fight the enemy here. After all, he was a researcher and couldn't even truss a chicken. Just as Yomi packed up and was about to run, the researcher continued to ask, "What about the things in the base that can't be taken away? Prepare to activate the emergency blasting device and blow up the whole place." Emergency blasting. Blasting? But there are still a lot of guards alive up there. The most important thing is that the research data and instruments here can't be leaked to the intruders. As for those guys, if they die, then they die. They can be buried with the intruders. Speaking up to this point, Huang Quan sneered and took out a glass bottle the size of a mineral water from a special safe under the table. The most important thing in this base was the Hell Butterfly original solution in this ice crystal glass bottle. So far, all the Hell Butterfly made into anesthetic were made from this bottle of original solution after diluting it hundreds of thousands of times. This kind of original solution was very troublesome to preserve. It had to be placed in a special bottle to not lose its efficacy, but that special bottle was very fragile, so it usually had to be locked in a special safe. But as long as this bottle was fine, then Yomi could make as many Hell Butterflies as he wanted. That's right, as long as this bottle was fine. Boom! But just as he picked up the glass bottle and was about to put it in the storage box, the office door was kicked open with a loud bang. Then, a white petite figure pounced on Yomi like lightning. Bang! Then, with a crisp explosion, Yomi was pressed on the table, and the bottle in his hand fell to the ground. The liquid inside flowed all over the floor. Chapter 256. WH. What? The speed at which the small white figure rushed in was simply too fast. Before Yomi could react, a seemingly slender hand that contained immense power had already pressed him onto the table. The little person who suddenly rushed in and pressed the head of the pharmaceutical department of the Heavenly Eye Group onto the table was naturally Dunia, who had taken a detour not long ago. Although her brain wasn't very good, her intuition was surprisingly good. After circling around the complex underground research institute for a while and knocking out a few researchers, the girl accidentally arrived in front of this office. Moreover, when she put her ear to the door to see if there was anyone inside, Dunia heard the two people inside saying that they were going to blow up the entire place. It could be said that fortune favors fools. What a joke! How could this be? Ryuto and the three Amon brothers were still above. If the entire building was blown up, wouldn't the four of them turn into mud? Therefore, Dunia didn't hesitate to act. She kicked open the door in a way that Colored Glaze couldn't be more envious of, and then rushed towards Yellow Springs as fast as she could, and pressed the old man down on the table. After succeeding, Dunia couldn't help but ridicule, "Old man. What did you just say? You want to blow up this place? Are you? Ha." But at this time, not far away, the white-robed researcher who was so scared that he fell to the ground looked at the bottle on the ground and shouted hysterically. Yellow Springs, who was pressed down on the table by Dunia, also looked at the broken glass bottle on the ground and shouted, You. Do you know what you have done?" Logically speaking, Yellow Springs should be held hostage by this little intruder, but he didn't even look at Dunia, and instead looked at the broken glass bottle on the ground with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. Within the broken glass bottle, the red liquid was slowly flowing on the ground, and it was evaporating at a speed visible to the naked eye. A strange crimson mist rose from the ground. Suddenly, a strange smell filled the office. How should this smell be described? Just like asphalt mixed with paint and glycerin, this liquid was then heated up to make it rise, causing the mist to rush into people's noses like sharp swords. Dunia also smelled the strange smell coming from the ground, and she hurriedly covered her mouth with one hand, while the other hand pressed down on Yellow Springs firmly, and shouted, "What the hell is this? Why is the smell so pungent? Let me go. This is the liquid of the hell butterfly. One drop is enough to kill a person, and it can be absorbed by breathing the air. If we stay here, we will all turn into monsters." Although Huang Quan's strength was no match for Dunia's monstrous strength, the old man still struggled desperately to get up from the table and escape. After all, as the instigator of the hell butterfly, Yellow Springs knew very well how amazing the effect of the liquid was. Recently, they deliberately circulated the hell butterfly to collect information, but it was just a paper anesthetic made from diluted liquid that was hundreds of thousands of times diluted, but it was enough to kill after consuming it. And now, the liquid that was spilled in the office was the real deal, and it wasn't diluted at all. If a person breathed in a few mouthfuls, what kind of monster would they turn into? Even Yellow Springs couldn't imagine it. But when she heard Yellow Springs' words, Dunia sneered, "Rotten old man, do you think I'm an idiot? How can a few mouthfuls turn a person into a monster in this world? Woo-woo, woo-woo." Before Dunia finished speaking, the researcher in the white coat let out a beast-like scream, and then the red muscles all over his body swelled. It directly burst the white coat that originally fit him. At the same time, the man's eyes flickered with a red light, and his expression became incomparably ferocious. Under the contrast of the red mist around him, he looked like a demon from hell. "Sorry, it seems like there really is one." The moment she reacted, Dunia stared blankly at the special glass bottle that fell on the ground, and then felt her scalp go numb, and her body flew out of the office. "Run, run, run, run quickly, or else you'll turn into a monster." After rushing out of the office door, Dunia could still hear the terrifying roar of the mutated researcher inside, and it scared her so much that her face turned green. But no matter how fast Dunia ran, it couldn't change the fact that she had already inhaled the liquid of the hell butterfly, and even felt a strange restlessness in her body. That feeling was like a spark, and a spark was burning fiercely in the girl's body. Although it wasn't particularly obvious yet, this spark would sooner or later become a raging fire, and not even ashes would be left. So Dunia ran as fast as a loli while shouting at Yomi, who was in her hand, "Hey, you're the one who researched that thing, right? Where's the antidote? Where's the antidote?" Yomi also inhaled the liquid of the hell butterfly at this time, so he actually wanted to say the same thing. The head of the pharmaceutical department hurriedly replied, "Go straight ahead and turn left, there's a research room. Some hell butterfly's antidote is stored there. Quick, quick, quick." Speaking of which, Dunia and Yomi actually inhaled more of the hell butterfly liquid than the researcher just now, but the former's physique was special, and the latter's body had many special antibodies, so the time of the outbreak was delayed. But without the antidote, the two of them would still turn into monsters sooner or later, this was without a doubt. It was a race against time, whether it was Dunia or Yomi, it was really a race against time now. The girl's petite figure quickly shuttled through the underground tunnel, and immediately came to a research room not far away according to Yomi's instructions. Hiss! So cold! The moment they entered, a bone-piercing chill came from inside, and almost froze the sweat on Dunia's face. This research room was specially used to store some low-temperature drugs and materials, and usually, one would need to wear a special protective suit to enter, but the two of them obviously couldn't care less now. "Put me down. Go break the glass and take out those light blue bottles of antidote. I'm going to start the injection." SK. Although she didn't want to listen to the orders of this messy head, Dunia still threw him to the side of the table, and rushed to the wall cabinet, broke the glass with a punch, and took out the light blue antidote inside. Behind them, Yellow Spring quickly took out 2 syringes from the cabinet. She took the anti-venom from Dunia and loaded it into the syringes. Then, she inserted the syringes into the arms of the 2 people at the same time. It wasn't that Yomi really wanted to inject the antidote into Dunia, but he knew that if he didn't do so, he would definitely be killed on the spot by this violent girl, so he had no choice but to do it. Seeing the light blue antidote slowly injected into her body, Dunia couldn't help but ask, "Is this safe? Won't I turn into a monster?" "I don't know." But Yomi shook his head, and said with an uncertain tone, "What do you mean? The poison that you made, the antidote that you made, you said you don't know?" Suddenly, Dunia couldn't help but grab Yomi's hair, and almost pulled out his messy hair. "I don't know." Hell's Butterfly is still in the experimental stage, and this antidote is a newly developed product. It hasn't even gone through clinical trials. Who knows what will happen after it's injected? You're giving us this stuff to inject? What else can we do? Wait for death. Yomi couldn't help but clench his teeth, and said angrily, "If you didn't break the glass bottle of antidote, we wouldn't have fallen to this state." You still have the nerve to say that. If you didn't make this broken medicine, I wouldn't. Maybe it was the effect of the Hell's Butterfly, or maybe it was the antidote that was injected into her. Originally, Dunia was going to slap Huang Quan, but who would have thought that she would suddenly feel dizzy, and then she fainted in a daze. While unconscious, she felt like her body was repeatedly soaked in a hot spring and an ice pool. Extreme heat and extreme cold washed over every corner of the room. This kind of feeling was not too comfortable, and no matter how hard one tried, they could not sleep soundly. Sway, sway, sway. When Dunia woke up from her coma, she vaguely felt that she seemed to be gently shaking, and there was a warm touch and familiar smell in front of her body, giving her a strong sense of security. This smell is Ryuto. She slowly opened her eyes, and saw a familiar head in front of her, and the surrounding scenery had turned into a familiar courtyard. It looked like the courtyard in the Rulong Group headquarters. "Oh, Dunia, you're finally awake." After sensing that the girl behind him woke up, Ryuto turned around and asked with a smile, What's going on?" "I want to ask you what's going on. What happened in the underground base? Why did you faint on the ground?" For Dunia, she didn't know what happened after she fainted, and Ryuto knew more than her. Just as Long Do and the 3 Amon brothers killed and chased away the guards, Long Do and the other 2 Amon brothers were still alive. The 4 of them quickly found the entrance to the underground research base and split up to look for Dunia. Fortunately, Ryuto followed the faint smell of vodka on Dunia's body, and it didn't take long to find her in the cold research room. However, Ryuto didn't see Yomi in the research room. It seems that Yomi quickly slipped away when Dunia fainted. Chapter 257. However, Ryuto was too lazy to care about Acheron's business. After all, he didn't know that Acheron was here. Instead, he hurriedly carried the unconscious Dunia out of the room. When he rescued Dunia, Ryuto also checked her body and didn't find anything wrong with her. She was just a little cold after being in the freezer for a short period of time. Therefore, he didn't choose to commit suicide to save her. After all, committing suicide for no reason was too stupid. Unless there was no other choice, there was no need to do so. As for the 3 Amen brothers, they found a lot of anesthetic in the underground research facility that hadn't been transported out yet, as well as a large monster that was full of hell butterflies. "What the hell is that?" When Amen saw the monster smashing around Acheron's office across the corridor, he also showed a puzzled expression. "I don't know. Let's leave first. This place doesn't seem right." Because they didn't know what kind of monster was hiding in this research facility, the three Amen brothers didn't continue to search after meeting up with Long Do. Instead, they directly buried a bomb and blew up the research facility along with the monster. Boom! With a loud explosion, the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company in the suburbs became history, and countless crimes were buried under a large pile of debris. After the five of them successfully evacuated, the source of anesthetic in the underground market was completely cut off. Now, they only needed to seize the remaining batch. That was the job of the flower merchant, and it didn't have much to do with Ryuto. You can rest here tonight. I'll call your father. After explaining what happened, Ryuto carried Dunya to the guest room and gently put her down on the bed, letting her have a good night's rest. Although he didn't know what happened, from Dunya's expression, she seemed to be a little tired, and her expression was very complicated. She should have a good rest. However, just as Ryuto was about to put the girl down and let her rest, Dunya reached out and grabbed his wrist. Actually... Under the dim light, Dunya stuttered as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Although Ryuto didn't know what happened before, Dunya remembered it clearly. She was infected by the hell butterfly, and although she was injected with the anti-venom, there was still no guarantee that she wouldn't mutate. After waking up, Dunya felt that the strange restlessness in her body was gone, but even so, she couldn't be sure that she was fine. Therefore, she was in a dilemma. On one hand, Dunya wanted to tell Ryuto what happened to her, but on the other hand, she was afraid to tell anyone. She was even afraid that Ryuto look at her like a monster. Naturally, Long Do noticed her bashful attitude. So, he asked, "Concerns, is there anything there's something? If, let's go see a doctor." "Well, seeing a doctor may not help." "Then you have to tell me exactly what happened. Hurry up, don't drag it out." "Ugh, okay." After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Dunya said in a trembling voice, "Actually, I seem to have inhaled something strange. The old man in the white coat said it's the hell butterfly's liquid, and after inhaling it, I'll become a monster." "What?" When he heard Dunya's words, Ryuto was stunned for a second, then he bounced up from the ground. It was obvious how excited he was. Is there a mistake? Dunya inhaled the hell butterfly? Ryuto didn't know what the so-called liquid was, but from the name, it should be a drug used to make the hell butterfly. The effect was definitely much stronger than a simple anesthetic. And Dunya actually inhaled that thing? Doesn't that mean she'll become a monster? That's not right. When he thought of this, Ryuto was very excited, but he immediately glanced at Dunya, and immediately realized that something seemed to be wrong. Logically speaking, after a human consumed the hell butterfly, there should be a quick change. Previously, Pang Saburo and Park In-young were the same, and they quickly turned into monsters that were neither human nor ghost. But since Dunya was carried out by Ryuto from the underground base, it has been at least an hour, but her body didn't change at all. Just when Ryuto thought that Dunya's body didn't change at all, he reacted by activating the rogue's analysis mirror to look at the girl, and then he showed an extremely surprised expression. Before this, if Ryuto remembered correctly, Dunya's attributes were name, Sai2 Dunya age, 15 years old attributes, wisdom LV1, physique LV4, courage LV3, insight LV3, charm LV2, but at this moment, her attributes became like this. Name, Sai2 Dunya age, 15 years old attributes, wisdom LV1, physique LV5, courage LV3, insight LV3, charm LV2. What's going on? Did she take the wrong medicine? Without any changes in other attributes, Dunya's physical ability actually reached the level of LV5 physique, extreme Superman? What does this mean? After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Ryuto reached out and held Dunya's hand, and said seriously, "Try to hold my hand with all your strength, you must use all your strength." Huh? Use all my strength? Forget it, I'll just hold it, it can't hurt him anyway. Dunya knew that Ryuto's strength was even stronger than her, so she immediately tightened her right hand with all her strength. At that moment, Ryuto only felt that the small palm was like an iron clamp that firmly clamped his hand. Severe pain accompanied by the sound of bones creaking came together. So Ryuto quickly stopped Dunya's violence, before his hand bones were broken by her. What kind of strength is this? LV5 physique, extreme Superman, is actually so terrifying. After the two hands released, Ryuto shook his palms that were a little blue, and explained to Dunya the abnormal state of her body. Not only I'm fine, but my physical fitness is also strengthened? After listening to Ryuto's explanation, Dunya couldn't help but open her mouth wide, with a look of disbelief. The reason for such a strange situation, at least with Ryuto and Dunya's poor knowledge, it was impossible to give a normal explanation. For this situation, they could only conclude that the Hell Butterfly was originally a potion that strengthened the body's ability. After Dunya overdosed, she was quickly injected with the anti-poison serum, and even laid in the cold storage for a while. Plus, she already had a superhuman physical fitness. These purely coincidental factors mixed together seemed to have achieved some unexpected results. It seemed to have allowed the girl to retain part of the Hell Butterfly's strengthened state, and at the same time, there were no obvious changes in the other parts. Even Ryuto didn't expect such a good thing to happen in the world. Dunya quickly took off her coat, and checked her body from head to toe. After confirming that there were no visible changes, Ryuto finally let out a sigh of relief. Although Dunya was an expired loli was still a loli. Long Do was really afraid that she would turn into a red giant because of the Hell Butterfly's poison. If that was the case, he might as well commit suicide on the spot and start all over again. But fortunately, she was fine now. The girl's skin was still snow-white and tender, her slender waist, flat chest, and petite feet were all fine. It was exactly the same as what Ryuto saw when he peeked in the Tokyo Emperor Hotel. Speaking of which, her waist was so thin that he could hold half of it with one hand, and her feet were so small, at most about 32 size, and her chest was so flat that he almost couldn't feel it. Ryuto checked Dunya while touching her body all over. After a while, he realized that what he was doing didn't seem to be appropriate. There's nothing wrong with me, right? But fortunately, Dunya's nerves were relatively thick, and at this time, she was nervous about her body, so she didn't realize that she was actually in a state where she should call the police. Ahem. After coughing to cover up his embarrassment, Ryuto smiled and said, "There should be no problem, but for safety's sake, I'll accompany you to the hospital tomorrow for a thorough examination." Well, then, what about tonight? Suddenly, Dunya was slightly relieved, but she still asked shyly. "You rest here tonight. If you feel uncomfortable, you can call me at any time." "It's too troublesome to call you at any time. Why don't you just stay here with me, okay?" Speaking of this, Dunya's little face slightly blushed, but judging from her cold hands and feet, the girl at this time was obviously still a little scared in her heart. Even if Dunya was strong and brave, she was still a girl a few months away from the marriageable age of 16. It was normal for her to feel scared when encountering this kind of situation. Okay, then I'll lie here for a while. If you have any problems, you must call me at the first moment, understand? If it was a normal time, Ryuto definitely wouldn't sleep in the same room with Dunya, but now her situation was a bit special, so he couldn't care so much. Just like this, Dunya lay on the bed on the tatami in the middle of the room, and Ryuto lay with his back facing Dunya. The two of them could be considered to have a peaceful night. Logically speaking, although the two of them were in the same room, they still scrupulously followed etiquette. Tomorrow morning, they would wake up as good men, so there shouldn't be any problems. Unless early in the morning, a car from Komashiro Villa would directly send the big sister of Rulon Group to the door. "Dancing costume, wait here for a while, I'll be right out." Yes, Mississippi, when the sun shone on the ground the next morning, under the gaze of 16 Knights dancing costume, colored glaze, who hadn't come to find Ryuto for a long time for school, leisurely walked towards Rulon Group headquarters. However, judging from Lioli's relaxed expression, she definitely wouldn't be able to guess what kind of shocking scene she would be witnessing in a moment. Chapter 258. Four-colored glaze, going in and out of the Roulon Group headquarters, was as natural as going in and out of her own home. The guards would automatically open the door when they saw her. She no longer needed to kick the door open. As the antique door was slowly pushed open, Lu Li's slim figure swaggered into the room like a mistress of the house and walked into the bedroom of the master of the house. Because she had lived here for a period of time, Lu Li could be said to be familiar with the place along the way. The people she saw along the way also nodded and greeted her respectfully. She really had the feeling of a hostess. The morning air is really good. There were many plants planted in the Roulon Group headquarters, and the buildings were scattered, so the air was fresh. Walking on the wooden floor accompanied by a refreshing breeze in the early morning was indeed a pleasant feeling. After a while, colored glaze arrived at the door of Ryuto's room and knocked on the door. Knock knock. 3 seconds passed, and there was no response. Knock knock knock. She knocked again, and 5 seconds passed, and there was still no response. He's not here? He woke up so early? No, this guy didn't sleep here last night. Colored glaze opened the door and glanced around. She found that it was empty inside, and the bed sheets were neat and tidy. It didn't look like someone had just slept here. Where did that guy go? Hey, Auntie, do you know where Ryuto is? Just as Colored Glaze was wondering why Ryuto disappeared so early in the morning, an auntie in charge of cleaning walked by, so she stopped her and asked. This? The auntie seemed to be hesitant, but she still reported, last night, the young master seemed to be resting at the Shura room. I don't know anything else. Shura room? Why did he choose to sleep in the guest room instead of his own bedroom? Hearing this, Colored Glaze thanked the auntie and walked towards the Shura room. Because of the special nature of the Dragon Group, the names of the rooms inside were also very much like a Chunibyu style. Between Rakshasas, between hell, between demons, between yakshas. In Colored Glaze's eyes, these names were F*King ridiculous. Who would want to stay in a guest room like this? The cabinets would probably move by themselves at night. Coincidentally, the place where Ryuto stayed last night was the legendary Shura's room. This name was very appropriate. Just like that, Colored Glaze quietly walked in the direction of Shura's room. Her footsteps were careful and cautious, and she made almost no sound, as if she wanted to scare someone. Speaking of which, I haven't come to look for him recently. He must be lonely by himself. Well, I didn't come here because I wanted to see him. I didn't come here because I wanted to go to school with him. I just wanted to give this guy a little benefit so that I could tie him down tightly. Well, that's it. After standing at the door and making up her mind, Colored Glaze pushed open the door and walked into the bedroom of Shura's room. Because it was early in the morning, the lights in the room were not turned on. Only a faint light penetrated through the door. What appeared in front of her was an exquisite little room. In the middle of the living room, she could vaguely see a bed placed on a tatami. There was a large bulge on the bed. It was obvious that someone was lying on top of it and resting. Oh. Who is it? When Colored Glaze pushed open the door and walked in, Ryuto, who was lying on the bed, finally woke up. He then asked in a surprised tone. But the moment he woke up, Ryuto first let out a cry of surprise. The reason for the cry was obviously because he found another big problem. He found a big problem. What is this? It can't be. After rubbing his eyes, Ryuto looked at the unnatural bulge under the quilt. He then felt the warmth and heaviness on his legs and waist. Only then did he finally realize what happened. If it was just a problem under the quilt, it wouldn't be a big problem. The real problem was that Colored Glaze actually walked in at this time without saying anything. Damn it! Suddenly, a few drops of cold sweat fell from Ryuto's forehead. He looked like a heartless man who was about to be found out by his wife. But Colored Glaze didn't seem to notice Ryuto's strangeness. She chuckled and said, "It's me. Why don't you sleep in the room and sleep in the guest room?" As she spoke, she walked in and opened the curtain next to her. Whoosh! The sunlight poured into the room along with the breeze. At the same time, it also shone on Ryuto's face that was covered in cold sweat. It was just a moment of interest, just a moment of interest. Can you go out first? I'm going to change my clothes. Gulp. After the window was opened, Ryuto swallowed a mouthful of saliva. But he still forced himself to remain calm and tried to chase colored glaze out of the room first. Okay, who wants to see you change? Strange. Why does this guy's quilt feel strange? It seems to be especially bulging. Because the curtains were opened, the light in the room was brighter. When colored glaze turned to look at Ryuto, she also noticed the abnormality on the bed. At this time, the lower half of this guy's body was covered in the bulging quilt. Only his upper body in messy casual clothes could be seen. Under normal circumstances, it was unlikely that he would wear such clothes to sleep. Not only was his collar messy, but there were also some slight claw marks on his cheeks, neck, and chest that were exposed. That's right. Claw marks. Although Ryuto himself didn't notice it, colored glaze saw the strange marks on his body. Was he scratched by a cat? It can't be, right? Ryuto didn't have a cat, and the distance between these claw marks was much larger than a cat's. It looked like... Instantly, colored glaze's body froze. She seemed to have thought of a scene that she often saw in TV dramas or novels. And the name of that scene was... Catching an Adulterer in Bed. Impossible. That guy Ryuto wouldn't do such a thing. Colored glaze didn't want to think too much about it, but the unnatural bulge on the bed, Ryuto's sneaky expression, and the fact that he suddenly moved to the guest room, had claw marks on his body, and his clothes were messy. It was hard not to think too much about it. Just as colored glaze was thinking, Ryuto obviously panicked. He tried his best to put on an embarrassed expression and laughed awkwardly. Miss Colored Glaze? I really need to change my clothes, okay? Is that so? Then I'll help you change. In the next moment, Colored Glaze's lips curved into a sweet smile. This smile was like a punch to Ryuto's face. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, how can I do that? Don't say that. Didn't you say that you'll marry me in a year? Then we'll be considered as an engaged couple. Isn't it the wife's duty to change her husband's clothes? Looking at Colored Glaze's virtuous wifey expression and graceful movements, Ryuto would be very happy if it was any other time. But now he could only sweat and say, Yes. It's like that, but right now I'm a little... Ugh. Just as Ryuto was desperately trying to find a way to dodge it, a soft moan suddenly came from under his blanket. This sound was made by a woman, and it seemed that the woman was still in a half-awake state. The moment she heard this sound, Colored Glaze's mouth stretched into a few angles. It looked like she was smiling even more brightly, but there was no smile in her eyes. Lou. Colored Glaze? Actually, I've been practicing ventriloquism recently. Would you believe me? What do you think? I think you would believe me. After all, However, in the next second, just as Ryuto was desperately looking for an excuse, Colored Glaze immediately reached out her hand and pulled at the speed of lightning. With a clean and neat technique, he lifted the quilt from his body. Ryuto swore that Colored Glaze's speed of pulling was absolutely not compatible with her LV1 physique, crumbs of the world, physical ability. It was as if she had cultivated some strange skill like lightning flash. After the blanket was pulled away, under Ryuto's expression that looked like he wanted to die on the spot and Colored Glaze's Azura-like gaze, a familiar figure appeared on the bed. It was a very young girl. At this time, she was only wearing a simple set of underwear, causing her figure to look even more petite. Moreover, her exposed skin was even more snow-white and smooth. At this time, her long silver hair was not tied into a cute double ponytail like usual. Instead, it was completely draped over Ryuto's body. Coupled with the arms tightly hugging Ryuto's waist and the legs wrapped around his right leg, she looked like a large silver-haired koala. It was Dunya. Obviously, the girl who appeared on Ryuto's bed was Dunya. At this time, she was hugging Ryuto's waist, her small face pressed against the man's waist. With a satisfied expression, she continued to sleep soundly, completely ignoring the surrounding temperature that suddenly dropped by a few degrees. Suddenly, the smile on Colored Glaze's face became even brighter. Her gaze towards Ryuto showed a sense of contempt that said, "Look, this man is like trash. Trash, scum, scum, slut, lowlife, scum, bastard, ruffian, wretched man, stinking hooligan, shameless, scoundrel, scumbag, rotten man, scum of society, beast in human face, beast in human clothing." This was the first time Ryuto knew that humans could express so many different words through their gazes. But facing such a terrible situation, he smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, I can explain. Why don't you listen to my explanation first, then think about what to do next?" Actually, it would have been better if he did not speak. Once he spoke, Colored Glaze was so angry that she immediately kicked him. According to Ryuto's knowledge, Colored Glaze always had the habit of kicking things when she was angry. He did not expect that one day, the one being kicked would be him. Explain, explain, explain. If explaining is useful, why do we need police in this world? Suddenly, Colored Glaze scolded in exasperation while raising her small black pantyhose foot to kick Ryuto. Her kick made Ryuto not know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 259. Colored Glaze's kicks were like mosquito bites to Ryuto. They didn't hurt at all and were soft like a massage. In addition, this young lady was used to wearing black stockings or pantyhose under her skirt. The bottom of the high-grade pantyhose felt silky smooth to the touch, which increased the awkwardness of this action. It didn't look like an attack, but more like a flirting. Bastard. Scum. Scum. Okay, listen to my explanation first. After being kicked a few times by Colored Glaze, Ryuto, who was afraid that she would cover her feet and jump around on the spot, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out and grabbed the girl's ankle to prevent her from doing such meaningless actions. Let go. After Ryuto grabbed her ankle, Colored Glaze struggled violently. But with her little strength, how could she break free? She could only rage helplessly. Listen to my explanation first, then I'll let go. Scram. Stinky pervert. Phew. You don't want to listen, right? Then I won't hold back. Seeing that Colored Glaze wasn't listening to him, Ryuto decided to use some violent methods. He grabbed Colored Glaze's little foot and threw it to the side. He skillfully disrupted the girl's balance, causing her to slip and fall onto the bed unconsciously. Then, she was embraced by a perverted right arm. After putting Colored Glaze on the bed, a very strange scene appeared on the bed. On Ryuto's right was Dunya, who was hugging his waist. Her slender snow-white legs were wrapped around his right leg. On Ryuto's left was Colored Glaze, who was lying on the ground. He pulled her body as close to his chest as possible, letting the two of them lean their heads together. Hugging left and right, it was truly a blessing. Especially since both of them were top-notch beauties. This made him even more blessed, and it was about to overflow. I didn't do anything to Dunya. She was poisoned last night. I was afraid that something would happen to her, so I stayed in the guest room to accompany her. It's that simple. Before Colored Glaze could continue to flip out, Ryuto leaned his face close to hers and stared into her eyes. He spoke in a serious tone. Of course, that was indeed the case, and he wasn't lying. Last night, it was indeed because Dunya was poisoned by the hell butterfly. Ryuto was worried that something would happen to her, so he agreed to sleep here. If anything happened, he could immediately buy medicine from the Krypton Gold Mall to save her life. In Ryuto's Krypton shopping mall, there were all kinds of wonderful medicines that could be saved as long as one did not die on the spot. It was just a matter of whether one was willing to spend the money. But for some reason, Long Do, who was supposed to be sleeping next to the bed, seemed to have been pulled into the bed by someone and then hugged like a pillow to sleep. Later on, Ryuto found out that Dunya had the habit of hugging a big stuffed bear to sleep. Presumably, this little brat was confused and thought that Ryuto next to her was her stuffed bear, so she pulled him into the quilt. With this pull and hug, the situation became like this in the morning. What was more coincidental was that before Ryuto woke up, colored glaze came over early in the morning. Wasn't this a coincidence? This kind of coincidence often appeared in third-rate novels, but he didn't expect it to happen in reality as well. After listening to Ryuto's explanation, colored glaze's expression finally became better. After all, she knew that nothing shameless happened between the two. But she still said unhappily, we're lying in the same bed. Who knows if you didn't take the opportunity to touch Dunya? Don't worry, if I touch her, I'll be behind you. Is that okay? Who allowed you to touch me, shameless? Even so, colored glaze's face was still slightly red, looking very cute. This kind of atmosphere suddenly became ambiguous, plus the fact that the two of them were lying on the bed together, with a third wheel next to them. Ryuto couldn't help but kiss the young lady's rosy lips. After being kissed, colored glaze pretended to resist for a while, then she reached out and wrapped her arms around the man's neck, and kissed Ryuto on the bed. Since the two of them kissed for the first time a few months ago, Ryuto had been kissing this young lady a lot. Every time, she resisted on the surface, but in reality, she liked it very much. But as everyone knew, it was early in the morning, which was the time when the blood of men was more vigorous. Coupled with the beauty in his arms, the soft and smooth touch on his lips, and the sweet smell in his nose, it was even more tempting to rise to the heavens. This was a completely normal phenomenon for men. After all, if there was no such phenomenon, then there would be no reproduction, and the human race would be extinct. So this rise to the heavens was a sacred activity to save the world, and there was absolutely no meaning of shame in it. As they kissed, colored glaze's legs wriggled slightly, and she also felt the rising situation on the other side, so her face became even redder, and she even retracted her legs at lightning speed. Colored glaze naturally knew the meaning of this phenomenon, but after all, she was not the carnivorous Yun Yen, so this kind of thing was still a bit early for her. A bit early. However, just as the two of them were engaged in a quarrel, Dunya, who was hugging Ryuto's waist and sleeping, woke up in a daze. What was very awkward was that Dunya's face happened to be leaning on Ryuto's side waist, which was actually very close to the rise to the heavens position, and she could see it as soon as she opened her eyes. What is this thing? A mushroom. Among the three in Ryuto's harem, Dunya knew the least about the matters between men and women. Therefore, even if she was fully awake, she probably wouldn't know what this kind of physical change meant, let alone in this kind of confused state where she had just woken up. Not sure if it was out of instinct, or because she felt that thing was blocking her view, Dunya reached out her white and smooth hand to grab it, and after holding it, she wanted to move it away. If it was a normal girl doing this, it would definitely be very enjoyable. But Dunya, compared to a normal girl, her strength was definitely more than 100 million points, which was more than 10 times, to the point where she could pull any organ out of a person's body with her bare hands. Thus, in the next second, a series of panicked screams came from the room. Dunya, what are you doing? Let go. Let go. Dunya could swear that she had never heard Long Do make such an anxious cry, as if he would cause some kind of tragedy if he didn't let go of Long Do. Morning, what happened to you just now? After a few seconds, Dunya finally let go, rubbing her eyes as she climbed up from the bed, but she saw that Ryuto's face was a little pale, as if he was seriously frightened, and was covering a certain part of his body on the ground. No, it's nothing, you're awake. Suddenly, Ryuto couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, but his face revealed a timid smile. Although Dunya didn't know what happened, Ryuto knew that the situation just now was actually very dangerous. Especially when this stinky brat held the dragon head staff and was about to break it down. If it wasn't for Ryuto's quick reaction and blocking with his hand, he would have become the first eunuch in Japan. Too terrifying, too terrifying. Thinking of the terrifying scene just now, Ryuto couldn't help but sigh. After waking up, the second thing Dunya saw was colored glaze sitting on the bed with a red face and a slightly weak body. She asked curiously, "What are you doing here? And why is your face so red? Are you uncomfortable?" Actually, she's not blushing because she's uncomfortable, but because she's too comfortable. Ba 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 ba. Shut up. Don't say any more. Go back to your room and change your clothes. before Ryuto could finish his half-teasing and half-flirting words, Colored Glaze blushed and pushed him out of Shura's room. Although Colored Glaze's strength couldn't push Ryuto, he took the opportunity to escape from this Shura's room and went back to his room to change his clothes and wash up. After Ryuto left, Colored Glaze turned to look at Dunya, who was sitting on the bed and stretching. She frowned and said, "Hurry up and change your clothes, actually wearing this and hugging Ryuto to sleep, really shameless." Hearing Colored Glaze's words, although Dunya was relatively slow, but she could roughly smell the sour taste in the words. The girl grinned and laughed arrogantly. Could it be that someone is jealous? No way. Could it be that someone hasn't slept with Ryuto before? Humph. You're still helping others count the money after being sold. Is your brain filled with vodka? Seeing Dunya's expression of being taken advantage of but still thinking that she was cool, Colored Glaze really wanted to kick her. But she didn't dare. After all, Dunya wasn't Ryuto. If she kicked this bear, she would definitely be beaten back, and Colored Glaze couldn't beat Dunya. But no matter what, Dunya still changed into her usual clothes and followed Colored Glaze outside to eat breakfast. Seeing that this little rascal was drinking vodka so early in the morning, Miss Lioli scolded her angrily again. But of course, Dong Nia didn't pay her any attention. Instead, she drank even more vigorously and even deliberately made pausing sounds. This atmosphere, it's really troublesome. Although he already knew that Dunya and Colored Glaze's relationship wasn't that good, it was obvious that after the left hugging right incident, just this morning, the two's antagonistic relationship had a new development. Especially when Ryuto sat on the left and right of the two girls in a car and drove towards Takuri First High, he finally understood what it meant to be in a dilemma. No matter what Colored Glaze said, Dunya would find fault with her, and vice versa. And no matter how Ryuto replied to one of them, the other would take the opportunity to find fault with Ryuto. It was like kicking him around like a rubber ball. The scariest thing was that these two girls started bickering at the dining table, all the way to the school gate, and they were still bickering. With Ryuto sandwiched between them, it felt like a live performance of a palace drama. This wasn't 2 slices of bread with cheese, but 2 frying pans with a hot dog. Ryuto felt like he was a hot dog sandwiched between 2 hot frying pans. No matter which side he leaned towards, he would be scalded until he couldn't take care of himself. After being annoyed to the point that he had no choice, Ryuto took advantage of the two girls bickering to sneak away, quickly sneaking into the front of the school. Sigh. I really don't know what to do with them. If only Yunyen was here. When he walked through the school gate, Ryuto couldn't help but miss Yunyen. After all, only that woman could use her status as the main wife to restrain Dunya and Colored Glaze, not letting them chatter to death beside Ryuto's ear. And compared to the impatient Dunya and the long-winded Colored Glaze, the gentle and pleasant Yunyen was more in line with the identity of a girlfriend, and when he was with her, he felt more comfortable. Comfortable in various senses. Chapter 260. However, just as Ryuto was thinking about this, he really did see a familiar tall figure not far away. Her long brown hair was as light as a cloud, and she was especially tall among her peers. She had a voluptuous figure, and she had a celestial charm that could cause the downfall of a city. When he thought that such a gentle and lovely senior was actually his girlfriend, Ryuto's mind that was about to boil from the quarrel between Colored Glaze and Dunya early in the morning immediately calmed down. Thus, Ryuto hurriedly ran over and patted her shoulder at the same time. He smiled and said, "Yunyen, good morning." But just as Ryuto patted the woman's shoulder, the woman turned her head and said angrily, "Ah? Who are you calling hey? I'll kill you." "I'm the one who wants to ask, who are you?" After knowing Yunyen for so long, this was the first time Ryuto was yelled at by her. Moreover, it was the kind of yell that had a ferocious face and eyes that were burning with anger, as if she would attack at the slightest disagreement. Did I see the wrong person? Is this really Yunyen from Suki Suki? After being yelled at, Ryuto saw Yunyen's outfit clearly. How should he describe it? Normally, senior sister Yunyen gave off a gentle and beautiful feeling. Her neat and tidy school uniform was spotless, and there was always a gentle smile on her face without any makeup. It made people want to make a statue of her and worship her. But what was up with Yunyen today? She was wearing a school uniform with long sleeves and a long skirt that was completely out of season. Her crew collar tie was crooked in front of her chest, and her hair was slightly messy. Her lips were smeared with red lipstick, and there was a cigarette in the shape of fruit candy. This style actually had a special adjective in Japan, called delinquent girl. That's right, it was the kind of delinquent who would walk in groups of 3 to 5 and make a lot of noise on the street, and would pull out a steel pipe from under her long skirt at any time to fight. However, the sudden change in her appearance and Yunyen's attitude shocked Ryuto. This woman was clearly not a delinquent girl. Just as Ryuto was sizing up his girlfriend in surprise, Yunyen raised her eyebrows and said impatiently, "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a woman before?" No, I just feel a little unused to it." After sensing Yunyen's boss-like aura, Ryuto didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only retreat half a step like a reserved primary school student. Ha. Seeing Ryuto's expression, Yunyen finally couldn't hold it in anymore. The malevolent expression on her face instantly collapsed. She laughed so hard that she bent forward and backward. Her long skirt swayed back and forth, looking very cute. This laugh made Yunyen change from the delinquent girl just now to the gentle senior sister Ryuto knew, as if the scene just now was just an illusion. This sudden change made Ryuto dumbfounded. He asked suspiciously, "Yunyen? What are you doing?" Sorry, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm trying to cosplay." Suddenly, Yunyen showed her usual gentle smile. She took out a handkerchief and wiped off the bright color on her lips. She looked a lot more pleasing to the eye than the delinquent girl just now. Cosplay? It wasn't that Ryuto hadn't heard of this term, but he didn't think that this term could be used together with Yunyen. Generally speaking, cosplay was to play a role in the virtual world or the real world through costumes. The players were also called cosplayers. It was quite common in this country. But Yunyen didn't seem to have anything to do with cosplay. Why did she cosplay as a delinquent girl to come to school early in the morning? According to Yunyen's explanation, she was actually collecting material for her next novel. Because in Yunyen's next novel, the heroine is a cosplayer. The heroine usually looks like an ordinary campus idol, but she will cosplay as various characters at night to fight against the strange people in the streets and alleys. What do you think? Interesting setting, right? It's really interesting, but this kind of setting usually only appears in some strange works. Strange works? What do you mean? Ahem, nothing, you can continue. Although she didn't know what Ryuto's words meant, Yunyen still explained her idea. In order to know how the heroine felt when cosplaying as various characters, Yunyen began to study this special style of dress and tried to simulate the psychological changes after cosplaying. So, there was a strange scene of her dressing up as a delinquent girl to school early in the morning. I think a character should be played from the inside out. It's not as simple as changing the appearance. So I just imitated the delinquent girl's attitude and yelled at you. I'm really sorry. When mentioning the matter of yelling at Ryuto, Yunyen still nodded apologetically with a guilty look. Ryuto also smiled generously and said, "It's okay, anyway you look quite fresh. Yelling at me is fine, I won't care about this small matter." That's great. If you don't mind, can you accompany me to Akihabara after school? Akihabara? Why are we going there? After hearing this strange yet familiar name, Ryuto showed a puzzled expression. Anyone who had a little understanding of 2D and otaku culture should know that the so-called Akihabara was a street with a special name of 2D Sacred Place. Although this street in the Chiyoda district used to be famous for selling home appliances, after the beginning of the new century, the streets of Akihabara were filled with maids soliciting business, rows upon rows of anime stores, colorful game halls, computer accessories crowded the alleys, and 2D posters everywhere. However, although he knew what kind of place it was, Ryuto had never been to Akihabara before because there was no need. When the school bell rang in the afternoon, he rushed out of the classroom and ran towards the third grade building where Yunyen was. But when the two arrived at the Akihabara New Hall, in Narukai's high-speed car, Ryuto noticed something strange. "Ah, isn't that? It can't be? It's Ryuto Kiryu? Oh, that person's acting is really good. Should we take a picture with him or something?" When Ryuto and Yunyen stood at the entrance of the Akihabara New Hall, the surrounding audience, who were obviously here to watch the competition, couldn't help but discuss behind their backs. But the topic of the audience's discussion sounded a little strange to Ryuto. What do they mean? That person's acting is really good? What am I acting as? However, just when he was puzzled, not far away from the crowd, a fatty wearing the Dori First High School uniform with cheap dyed blonde hair walked out. The fatty looked to be at least 200 pounds. The grease secreted from his face was enough to make people sick to death. His entire body emitted a greasy smell. But when he saw Ryuto standing at the entrance, he excitedly ran over and patted Ryuto's shoulder. He laughed and said, "Hey brother, you're also acting as Ryuto Kiryu? What a coincidence. Me too." When he saw the fatty dressed like him, Ryuto almost wanted to punch him. But from this sentence, Ryuto finally understood what the people around him were thinking. That's right, this group of Akihabara 2D residents seemed to think that Ryuto was acting as himself, acting as the recently powerful young master. It was that simple. Chapter 261. The so-called cosplay actually didn't have any rigid requirements for the cosplay object. Whether it was cosplaying a character in a manga, anime, game, movie, or even a real-life character, it could all be treated as a cosplay. In this case, the most eye-catching popular person at each time period, and it had to be a very unique kind of popular person, would definitely be the first choice for cosplay. For example, a certain Kyoto leader who was recently popular in Tokyo. And from an objective point of view, Ryuto was really too unique. As everyone knew, Ryuto Kiryu was a Kyoto young master and a Kyoto leader. His identity was very special, and he often appeared on the internet because of various news, becoming the topic of conversation. Secondly, his appearance was also very unique. His low-quality dyed golden hair looked a bit like a Super Saiyan figurine with the paint peeling off. He often wore the Dori First High School uniform and ran around outside. He was also very handsome, and his temperament was very special and perfect. Therefore, the two elements of low-quality dyed golden hair and Dori First High School uniform combined together became the standard template of Ryuto Kiryu cosplay. In fact, when he saw the fatty with a greasy face cosplay him outside, Ryuto had already guessed what kind of scene might appear in a while, but he didn't expect it to be so exaggerated. Because the Akihabara cosplay competition was about to be held, this Akihabara New Hall was already bustling with people, and most of them were two-dimensional people wearing cosplay clothes. He didn't know if it was because of the popularity of Ryudo recently, or if it was because the threshold to cosplay as him was relatively low, but as far as the eye could see, all the male cosplayers in the hall were cosplaying as Tongshang Ryudo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was already impossible to count. Suddenly, Yunyen looked around and shouted in surprise, "Wow, so many Ryuto, and some of them are really good cosplayers. Spare me, is there something wrong with this group of people?" Although Yunyen was very interested in observing the group of Ryuto cosplayers around her, the original host next to her helplessly covered his face, as if he didn't know how to complain. Looking to the left, it's me. Looking to the right, it's me. Looking to the front and back, it's still me. This feeling was really strange, as if someone poked Ryuto's nest, and a lot of fake Ryuto Kiryu fell out from it, drowning him in it. However, thanks to him, Ryuto and Yunyen walking around the hall didn't cause any commotion. After all, everyone thought that Ryuto was also a cosplayer and not the real person. As for Yunyen, on the one hand, she was wearing a long school uniform, and on the other hand, she was wearing a mask that covered half of her face, so she didn't seem so eye-catching. As a result, the two of them were able to enjoy the relaxing atmosphere here, strolling around while holding hands like an ordinary couple. Due to the special identity of Ryuto and Yunyen, even if they went out on a date, they didn't dare to openly hold hands. This time, they unexpectedly got what they wanted. When the two strolled around, there were a lot of audience curiously looking at the two, and even ran over to ask for a photo. That Ryuto cosplayer is really good, the quality is so high. There's also a delinquent girl next to him. Ha ha ha, what a match. A handsome man, a beautiful woman, and a delinquent, it's a match made in heaven. Listening to the praises around her, Yunyen's eyes narrowed with a smile. Hey, they're all praising us for being a good match. She reached out and grabbed Ryuto's arm, and half of her body leaned over, looking like a cute girl in love. Of course, we're a good match. Just when Ryuto and Yunyen were sweetly sticking together, the loudspeaker in the venue suddenly sounded. Ahem, everyone, this time's Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition is about to start. Please move to the fake as authentic booth in the center of the hall and enjoy the passionate performances of dozens of cosplayers from all over the country. Oh. It's starting, let's go. After hearing the announcement from the loudspeaker, the group of cosplayers and audience quickly ran to the center of the hall. It was like they were fighting for food in the cafeteria. Wait. How come I don't know that this competition is called Ryuto Kiryu Cosplay Competition? I think it's because all the contestants are cosplaying as you, so they changed the name. Anyway, it's more or less the same. Although Ryuto did not know whether to laugh or cry at the fact that so many people were cosplaying as him, Yunyen was obviously very happy about it, because it showed how charming her boyfriend was. Not long after, a long table that looked like a press conference was placed neatly in front of the large booth that was filled with spectators. Behind the table sat 3 people who looked like judges. The 3 judges were an old man wearing an old-fashioned kimono with white hair and a beard. The other one was a middle-aged man in a suit who looked like he had just gotten off work. The last one was a middle-aged woman who was dressed like Lolita, but her face was covered with 30 centimeters of powder. When Ryuto and Yunyen found a place to stand, someone looked at the judges and exclaimed, "Kese." Who would have thought that this cosplay competition would be able to invite these 3 judges? It's really scary. These 3? Who are they? After hearing this, Ryuto could not help but ask. You don't even know them? That person glanced at Long Do with disdain, and then he introduced the 3 legendary figures who were known as the 3 giants of Autumn Leaf Plains. The old man in the kimono was called Otaku Sennin. It was said that he had devoted his entire life to the great otaku industry, collecting hundreds of thousands of manga and anime. As he had too many manga at home, he could only live in a paper house under the bridge. The middle-aged man was called Gaming Otaku King. He had been playing all kinds of video games since he was born, and devoted his limited life to the infinite gaming world. Later on, he even joined the gaming company Nintendo, and became the exclusive game tester of Nintendo. Lastly, Aunt Lorita was known as the Cosplay Empress. She had more than 30 years of cosplay experience and had cosplayed close to 10,000 ACG characters. Because she cosplayed too many characters, she even developed the symptoms of dissociative identity disorder. There were more than 10 personalities residing in her body, and she was proud of it. Sennin, Otaku Sennin, and Empress. These 3 were known as the Big 3 in Akihabara due to their extraordinary achievements in various aspects. And this time, the 3 of them were actually the judges of the Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition. It was no wonder that the surrounding audience was shocked. Just as the competition was about to start, Sennin, who was sitting in the middle of the judges, held a pot of wolfberry tea and sighed, "Phew, I hope that this time I will be able to see some young people with backbone, so that my trip here will not be in vain. Oh ho ho, I'm afraid that will be a little difficult. After all, the cosplay characters this time are different from ordinary people, and not everyone can act with such grandeur." The cosplay empress beside him laughed coldly, and at the same time, she opened the folding fan in her hand and covered half of her face. "It's useless to say more, let's see who's the real deal. Let's start, we can't wait any longer." Finally, Otaku Sennin, who was sitting on the side, pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and crossed his fingers in front of his face. The pure white reflection on the lenses revealed a posture of a bad person. Yes. Everyone. The first Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition is about to begin. Let's welcome the first cosplayer. Perhaps because the aura of the big three was too strong, the beautiful host standing on the stage said in a slightly stiff tone, and at the same time, she stretched out her hand and made a please gesture to the side of the passage. Under the spotlight, the first person to walk up the stage from the contestants' passage was the fat guy who talked to Ryuto outside the hall. He walked aggressively to the center of the stage, bowed slightly, and began his performance. According to the rules of this competition, each contestant was required to perform a Ryuto Kiryu famous scene after going on stage, and then a comprehensive score was given based on his performance, costume, and makeup. The famous scene performed by the fat guy was the third act of Extreme Secret Book. Dark City. Ryuto Kiryu Yoshiyuki, which was the scene where Ryuto rushed into the enemy's formation alone and defeated the old thief Sakata. Old thief. Do you dare to fight me to the death? Why yeah. Ha. Ah. Accompanied by shameful lines and unintelligible shouts, the fat man cosplaying as a dragon started fighting on the stage out of nowhere. He rolled, hit, and kicked on the stage, and it looked very lively, but the fighting movements. It was a bit like the old ladies and grandpas in the street park doing aerobics. The most exaggerated thing was that the person on the stage was performing an awkward performance that made Ryuto's scalp tingle, but the audience was constantly cheering. Good. Hey. Very energetic. Although the body is not quite the same, at least the posture is there. When the fat guy finished a set of Ryuto Hooligan Fist, the three judges also nodded one by one and gave a passable score, which was considered a pass. Seeing the fat guy walk off the stage with his hands raised, Yunyen said excitedly, "Wow, so cosplaying Ryuto is like this, it looks really." Hey. Why are you squatting on the ground? Originally, Yunyen said to Ryuto that, it looks really interesting, but when she turned her head, she found that the person next to her was actually squatting on the ground with his head in his hands, with a, who the hell did I offend, expression on his face. I'm really not that kind of person. Seeing the second Ryuto cosplayer walk onto the stage and begin to perform breaking rocks on his chest under the cheers of the audience, Ryuto could only stand under the stage awkwardly. He wanted to dig a hole and bury himself in it. Chapter 262. Ryuto finally understood. This time, the Tongshang Dragon Battle Cosplay Competition was written as Cosplay Competition, which meant Dragon Battle Execution Competition. Looking at the professional cosplayers who dressed exactly like him performing all kinds of extreme talents on stage, Ryuto really wanted to go back to the unrestrained Sky Tower and fight with Iam for 300 rounds. It was better than being publicly executed here. In this short half an hour, the group of Ryuto cosplayers on stage made all kinds of shameful poses while saying a lot of Chunibu quotes. They also performed a mess of talents one by one. Hooligan fist technique, smashing boulders on chest, golden bell cover iron underpants, steel spear choke, spitting flames from mouth, catching bullets with bare hands, swallowing swords with mouth, and so on. Ryuto didn't know until now that he actually had so many fancy skills in the rumors. Even his original body had the feeling of, what kind of monster is Ryuto Kiryu? But although Ryuto was blushing with shame as he watched, Yunyen next to him was watching with great interest. She jumped up and down from time to time, raised her hand and cheered from time to time, looking like a female fan who came to watch a concert. In this enthusiastic atmosphere, the dozens of professional Ryuto cosplayers who signed up for the competition finished their appearance one by one. The beautiful host walked up the stage again. Logically speaking, the next part should be the judges announcing the final winners, and then all the Ryuto cosplayers would come up together for a group photo. But unfortunately, after the host went up the stage, she just happened to see Ryuto standing in the crowd, looking at the stage with a numb gaze. Isn't there another Ryuto cosplayer? Did I just miss him? No way. Because the host was a newbie, she was especially afraid of making mistakes, especially in front of the Akihabara 3. Forget it, regardless of whether it was true or not, let him come up and perform first. Therefore, she steeled her heart, raised the microphone and shouted, "Okay, next, let's welcome the last cosplayer of the day with the warmest applause." Deng 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 deng. Under the host's signal, the lighting engineer above also shone the spotlight on Ryuto himself. What? What the hell? Just as the host looked at him, the spotlight shone on him, and the hundreds of eyes around him looked over. Long Do was completely dumbfounded. What did that guy say? The last Ryuto cosplayer? She couldn't be talking about. Could she be talking about me? After feeling the expectant gazes around him, Ryuto couldn't help but gulp. To be honest, it was already embarrassing for him to stand here and watch his imposter perform acrobatics with Yunyen. For him to perform on stage. Ugh. When he thought of this, Ryuto couldn't help but want to take out his gun and shoot himself in the head. However, although Ryuto wanted to run away or commit suicide on the spot, Yunyen on the side excitedly pushed his shoulder and laughed. "Oh, oh, oh. That's great. Go, go. Let them see how powerful the real Ryuto is. You really want me to go up? Go on, what's there to be embarrassed about?" Before Ryuto could react, Yunyen smiled and pushed him forward in the crowd. She looked like a little fangirl who wanted to see her boyfriend shine on stage. Damn it. Although Ryuto himself didn't want to go on stage and act like a hooligan, since his girlfriend said so, he had to go up. Therefore, under the excited gazes of many people, Ryuto walked stiffly on stage like a robot, as if he was walking to his own guillotine. Torture. It was really torture. Ryuto had experienced countless big scenes. He fought with the world's evilest people face to face, had hundreds of guns pointed at him, was chased by thousands of people in one night, and even challenged a contemporary martial arts master with his bare hands. However, Ryuto would rather go through all the hardships he had experienced before than run to the Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition to cosplay as himself. It was really embarrassing. This was the most embarrassing scene in history. For Ryuto, it was tantamount to a public execution. When he stood in the middle of the stage, he couldn't help but lower his head and curl his body slightly, looking very embarrassed. God was his witness. This was the first time Ryuto showed such an embarrassed posture, but it was the truth. After all, if people knew that the boss of the Rulon group actually went to Akihabara to cosplay as himself, it would be a social death on the spot. Ryuto would definitely become the laughingstock of the entire underground world. When he thought of this, Ryuto couldn't help but tremble. Of course, no one knew the torture and embarrassment in his heart at this time. In the eyes of the judges and the audience, he was just a coward who had never stood on stage before and was frightened by this big scene. Therefore, the immortal otaku couldn't help but remind him, "Little brother, you seem to be very nervous. Relax a little and just act out your understanding of the character Ryuto Kiryu." I don't know how to act. How about you guys tell me how to act? In helplessness, Ryuto could only smile bitterly and say to the judges. It was easy to act out someone else's character. Act out his own character? How could he act out that? You don't know? Suddenly, the cosplay empress frowned unhappily and sneered. You don't even know how to act out the character of Ryuto Kiryu, then why are you dressed like this? Don't underestimate cosplayers, young man. Indeed. The Otaku King added, cosplay requires a deep understanding of the character's characteristics from the inside out. It's not as simple as dyeing your hair and changing your clothes. You have to bring the character of Ryuto Kiryu to life. Bring the character to life. I've always been alive, okay? How am I supposed to live? After being guided by the Empress and the Otaku King, Ryuto's expression became even more awkward. Obviously, he had never thought that there would be a day when he would be taught how to act as Ryuto Kiryu. Seeing the contestants' incomparably awkward expression, Immortal Otaku took the initiative to suggest, how about this? You can simply act out a scene from Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryuto Kiryu Yoshiyuki. Will that do? Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryuto Kiryo Yoshiyuki, was a script created by the Rulon Group's extreme secret book, Records of Dark City, Ryuto Kiryo Yoshiyuki, on the day that Ryuto resolved the Sakata Rebellion. It had become the Bible of Ryuto's fans on the internet. In particular, the scene where Ryuto rushed toward the fully armed Sakata army while wearing only a loincloth, dodged the bullets, kicked the bulletproof vest, and easily took the head of the enemy general while being surrounded by thousands of people had even spread to tens of thousands of doujinshi novels and doujinshi videos. It could be said that it was extremely popular. But the problem was that, of course, Ryuto himself had never seen that thing, and he would not watch it. Because, of course, he knew clearly that the extremely exaggerated descriptions in it were complete nonsense. Of course, the current Ryuto could certainly capture the enemy general with thousands of troops, but at that time, he did not have the ability at all. He relied entirely on the help of the cat house's rabbit ball to win the battle. Ryudo didn't have the face to boast that he had killed Sakata with the help of others. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't read the extreme secret book, Dark City, Tong Shang Ryu's Fighting Righteousness Record. That would be too thick-skinned. However, at this time, this group of judges asked him to perform a scene from Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryuto Kiryo Yoshiyuki. What am I supposed to perform? How did I sneak into the Sakata mansion, then fight with Sakata, and finally throw him off the second-floor balcony? Seeing that Ryuto was still at a loss, Immortal Otaku could not help but ask, "It can't be, right? As the dignified actor of Ryuto Kiryo, you haven't even read Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryuto Kiryo Yoshiyuki? Doesn't this mean that you know nothing about Ryuto Kiryo himself?" The cosplay empress criticized without hesitation, "You haven't even read that famous book, so you probably don't know much about Ryuto. Then why did you play this role that is not suitable for you?" The gaming otaku king next to him also ridiculed, "Indeed, judging from your spirit, you are not on the same level as the character you are playing. In the future, you should know your limits and not choose such a difficult cosplay." What the F***CK? Are you kidding me? When the three judges rushed to point at the unqualified Ryuto cosplayer, Ryuto's expression became more and more unhappy. "I know nothing about myself. I know nothing about myself. I'm not on the same level as myself. Listen. Is this human language? I can't stand it. Who can stand it, you bastard? Is there anyone in this world who knows me better than me? Is it up to you guys to point fingers at me?" Therefore, the moment the judges were about to ask Ryuto to get off the stage and stop wasting time on the stage, a strong murderous aura suddenly swept through the entire Akihabara club. Hiss. Umph. Ryuto took a slight breath and squeezed out a simple "emph" from between his teeth, but as the sound spread out, the judges and audience who heard the "emph" could not help but shudder. What is this? What is going on? Immortal Otaku slowly raised his right hand, whose fingerprints were worn out from reading too much manga. That hand had been with Immortal Otaku for countless years, and it had never been afraid even when it was secretly touching a woman's butt. But even so, that hand was trembling non-stop. It was as if a trash with a combat power of 5 had personally witnessed the arrival of the universe's emperor, Frisia. Chapter 263. What is this? Who is this person standing on the stage? For a moment, the judges and the audience couldn't help but wonder. Ryuto had experienced so many things. Coupled with the fact that his status was getting higher and higher, his unique aura when he went all out was simply like those ultimate villains in anime. It was enough to make people pee their pants on the spot. Hence, when he was angered to death by the judges and finally couldn't help but unleash his firepower, the atmosphere in the entire venue suddenly changed. Everyone looked at the contestant on the stage in surprise. Even the three judges couldn't help but react in all sorts of exaggerated ways. Immortal Otaku was so shocked that he almost fell off his chair. The powder on the cosplay empress's face instantly exploded in all directions. The gaming Otaku King's suit quickly disintegrated, revealing the muscles that had been trained from playing games. Ryuto felt extremely pained by this situation. I'll show you what the real Ryuto Kiryo is like. You bunch of idiots who are cheering for an imposter. Wait, I can't do that, right? Originally, Ryuto had planned to announce the return of an ultimate boss and shock the anime world for 100 years. However, halfway through his shock, he realized that he couldn't reveal his identity. Otherwise, he would be in danger of being killed. After all, he was an ultimate boss who had come to Akihabara to show off in front of a group of anime veterans. This wasn't something that would make him look good. On the contrary, it would make people think that he was stupid. What should he do? He was so angry that he seemed to have done something irrational and stupid. Just as the judges and the surrounding audience were staring at the stage in shock, Ryuto couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. At this moment, the gaming otaku king, who was sitting on the judging panel, swallowed his saliva and tried his best to ask in a calm tone, "This contestant from the aura just now, could you be the real Ryuto Kiryu?" This question actually represented the doubts of many people in the venue. As the saying went, the real couldn't be fake, and the fake couldn't be real. The difference between the real deal and the fake deal, especially for an extreme big shot like Long Do, could be easily discerned just by looking at his aura. It was like a big tiger that could devour a person at any time, and a little kitten that pretended to be a big tiger. They could distinguish the real from the fake by instinct. Also, that flash of murderous intent just now really made people feel like they were in an ice cave. This was definitely not something that an ordinary cosplayer could do. It was something that only a man who had truly experienced blood and fire could do. However, before Otaku Wong could finish his sentence, Ryuto shook his head vigorously and said, "No, I'm not." It was impossible for him to admit it. He would never admit it even if he was beaten to death. If you're not Ryuto Kiryu himself, then you're... I'm just a fan of Ryuto Kiryu, just like the cosplayers here. Forget it. Since I'm going to act, I'll act until the end. After secretly sighing in his heart, in order to save his last bit of face, Ryuto could only pretend to be righteous and continue speaking. Everyone, what you learn from Extreme Secret Booklet, Dark City, Yoshiyuki Records, is it really Ryuto Kiryu himself? No, it's not like that. Before the others could react, Ryuto shook his head. What kind of person is the real Ryuto Kiryu? He is an open and above-board person, a person who is not afraid of struggle, a true man, a hero who walks in the dark, an underground hero who is not recognized by the world, a dragon who chases after the dark. Let me ask. Speaking of this, Ryuto continued in a heavy tone, how could such a hero in the darkness want others to write such a book to brag about his achievements? This must be a kind of trouble for Ryuto boss. He doesn't want this to happen. Good. What he said seems to make sense. Hearing this, the audience below the stage couldn't help but nod their heads, and the three judges also began to ponder with a thoughtful expression. It had to be said that when the cosplayer on stage spoke seriously, he gave off the feeling of being Tong Shang Ryu Do himself. Although that was impossible, he would never admit it even if he was beaten to death. So, our understanding of Ryuto boss shouldn't be superficial. We shouldn't only remember his glorious deeds, we shouldn't blindly imitate his rumored behavior, but we should learn his spirit. Learn the spirit that even if the world doesn't accept me, I will still move forward. Suddenly, Ryuto raised his head slightly, put his hands behind his back, and posed a posture of a master who was pointing at his back. Commonly known as a posture used for showing off. However, after hearing his commentary, the judges by the stage, the audience, and the cosplayers backstage seemed to feel the heroic spirit hidden deep under the surface of the water. The corners of their eyes were slightly moist. What a great hero in the darkness. If their understanding of Ryuto before was limited to the exaggerated deeds on the internet. But now, after hearing Ryuto's speech, they gradually understood the spirit of the Rulon Group second-generation leader. They felt the heroic spirit that soared to the sky. Even if the world doesn't accept me, I will still move forward. Handsome, too handsome. This wasn't the empty handsome of those foppish idols, and it wasn't the kind of scumbag handsome that said, "My is very big, bear with it." It was the kind of handsomeness that even if the world didn't accept him, he still had to walk on the streets with his head held high. He still did everything with a clear conscience. Extreme Tao is the darkness of the underground, Since that's the case, I will embrace the darkness. How solemn and stirring, how valiant, and what kind of man was he? For a moment, everyone around the stage was deeply attracted by Long Do's words. They were attracted by the tragic aura of the legendary dark hero that he spoke of. Clap clap, clap clap clap. After a long silence, some people couldn't help but clap. Clap clap clap. Clap 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 clap. Clap 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 clap. Unknowingly, the sound of applause began to faintly spread out like waves. A few seconds later, it turned into thunderous applause that shook the entire venue. It was as if the ceiling of the Akihabara New Hall would shatter. When the applause surged, Immortal Otaku stood up with tears streaming down his face and shouted to Ryuto, "Good. Well said. This is the real Ryuto Kiryu cosplayer. You deserve to be the champion of the Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition." Champion. 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 After hearing the words of the big three, the rest of the audience also began to become restless. They all shouted that the champion who imitated Ryuto should be awarded to Ryuto himself. Indeed, compared to the group of ordinary cosplayers who only imitated Ryuto's appearance and behavior, the last contestant clearly grasped the will and spirit of the extreme Dao boss. This realm made all the participating cosplayers blush with shame, and all the audience and judges were shocked from the bottom of their hearts. Under this enthusiastic atmosphere, there was no need to compete in the following competition, and the champion was thus decided. Not long after, Ryuto, who originally only wanted to show off and quickly run away, was surrounded by a group of Ryuto cosplayers. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, he awkwardly stretched out his hand and received the Cosplay Ryuto Kiryu. Winner medal from Immortal Otaku. 3, 2, 1, eggplant. Eggplant. Click. With the last dozens of Ryuto cosplayers on the stage, the professional photographer pressed the trigger on the dozens of Ryuto Kiryu on the stage, and also this precious photo of the first Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition. In the center of the photo, the man who was using the Cosplay Ryuto Kiryu. Winner medal to cover his face, not letting his face be photographed in the photo, looked somewhat embarrassed. But everyone knew that he was the winner of this competition, the king of Ryuto cosplay, and also left his own legend in Akihabara. Just like that, a chaotic storm came to an end. Of course, when the two of them sat in the car and returned home, Senior Sister Union's smiling face had already stiffened. He is an open and above-board person, a person who is not afraid of fighting, a real man, a hero who walks in the dark. Ha 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 ha. Sorry, I can't continue. At this time, Yunyen, who was sitting next to Ryuto, was imitating her boyfriend's speech while laughing. It's over, this time. What stupid thing did I do? It's too shameful. At this time, Ryuto was sitting in the car holding his head, with an embarrassed expression. Indeed, thinking about it carefully, what Long Do did just now was indeed quite shameless. He actually bragged about himself in front of hundreds of people, saying things like, a real man, a hero who walks in the dark, an underground hero who is not recognized by the world. Just thinking about it made one feel that he was shameless. The most embarrassing thing was that Ryuto won the Ryuto Cosplay Championship. I cosplayed me and won the Cosplay Championship. Who am I? Who am I cosplaying? Who is me? Who is cosplaying me? Suddenly, the entanglement in Ryuto's heart seemed to have become a classical philosophical question, making him feel that he didn't know what to say. But there was one thing that must be solved. Ryuto must not let today's incident be leaked. Even if it was leaked to Colored Glaze and Dunya, if those two women knew, they would definitely laugh at Ryuto for a lifetime. So Ryuto raised his head and counted to Yunyen next to him. That, Yunyen, today's incident will be a secret between us, don't tell anyone, okay? That. Yunyen smiled and pretended to think for a while, then smiled and said, not necessarily, it depends on your performance tonight. Performance tonight? You mean, didn't I tell you? Tonight, I'll wear all kinds of cosplay clothes for you to see. You have to help me get the feeling of those characters. If you do well, I won't tell anyone about what happened today. Huh? That's right. There was such a good thing today. Hearing this, Ryuto hurriedly nodded. At the same time, his face showed a slightly wretched expression. After all, it was late at night, and his girlfriend wore all kinds of cosplay clothes for him to see. This was really... He would laugh in his dreams tonight. Chapter 264. Speaking of Yun Yen, from a certain perspective, she was Ryuto's favorite woman. Especially in all aspects of being a girlfriend, Yun Yen was almost a perfect existence. She was the type that, as long as it was a man, he would definitely be fascinated by her and would be willing to kneel under her skirt. After all, not only was she beautiful, but she was also gentle and considerate. Her figure was also very good, and she had a strange charm that could cause the downfall of a city. The most important thing was, Yun Yen knew how to play. This knew how to play meant that she knew how to play in various senses. As long as it was something that she was interested in, she would try her best to try it. She was even very proactive and would not feel shy. For example, this time when she took the initiative to bring Ryuto to Akihabara to play, it was originally because Yun Yen wanted to write a female lead who was proficient in cosplay in her novel, and thus became interested in cosplay. Since she became interested in cosplay, Yun Yen naturally wanted to cosplay a variety of characters, so that she could find the feeling of writing. Of course, from a certain perspective, doing this was actually letting Ryuto off easy. After all, Yun Yen was his official girlfriend. Which man wouldn't want to see his girlfriend wearing cute maid clothes, nurse clothes, or witch clothes? If he could feel a different touch and smell, then it would be even more. Hiss. Therefore, on that night, after Ryuto and Yun Yen returned from Akihabara, they directly went to Tsutsumira Betsuin. Different from Tsutsumira Betsuin, which was the main family's Tsutsumira Betsuin was Yun Yen's own residence, which meant that her parents were not usually here. But even so, there were many bodyguards and housekeepers in the courtyard. On one hand, they usually protected the young lady, and on the other hand, they played a certain role in monitoring. However, this small trouble naturally couldn't stop the current Ryuto. In order to see Yun Yen's cosplay, he could easily cross a mountain of knives and a sea of flames. This was the power of LSP. When Yun Yen entered from the main door, Ryuto quickly climbed in from the side railing of the courtyard. After avoiding all the surveillance cameras and bodyguards, he arrived directly below Yun Yen's room. Seeing that there was no one around, Ryuto reached out and grabbed the drainage pipe beside the house. Like a flower thief, he jumped and flipped, and quickly climbed into Yun Yen's room. Speaking of which, this was the first time that Ryuto entered Yun Yen's boudoir. As the young lady of the Tsutsumira Betsuin group, although Yun Yen's room was not as luxurious as the one in Tsutsumira Betsuin, it was still extremely elegant and comfortable. The beautiful blinds were embroidered with a light cloud-like window screen. Beside the bed was a pure white desk with a laptop on it. Beside it was a huge bookshelf full of books. Obviously, this was where Yun Yen usually wrote her novels. The entire room was decorated with a fresh and pleasant aqua color. The soft bed was covered with a gorgeous tassel curtain, and there were a few small dolls at the head of the bed. The most unbearable thing was that as soon as Ryuto entered the room, he smelled a familiar fragrance. Every girl's fragrance was different, and these fragrances were part of their feminine charm. For example, Colored Glaze's body always had a simple and elegant fragrance of flowers and wood. It was like the fragrance of flowers, but also like the fragrance of wood. Besides being elegant, it also gave people a feeling of calmness. It made people want to hug her when they were tired and inhale to their heart's content. On the other hand, Dunia's body had a wonderful fragrance of vodka mixed with milk. Maybe it was because she drank vodka all year round, or maybe it was because alcohol flowed in Mao Xiong's body. This kind of burly man and milky Lolita's smell was very addictive. As for Yun Yen, she was pure, the fragrance of hormones. Her body's fragrance was really hard to describe. It was not the fragrance of flowers, nor the fragrance of wine or milk. It was a pure feminine fragrance. This kind of smell could only be smelled on a woman's body. It could not be found anywhere else. It was said that the smell of hormones could emit a scent that attracted the opposite sex. If this was the case, then Yun Yen might be one of the women with the strongest hormonal scent. This was because just by smelling the scent on her body, it could cause people to have very direct primitive thoughts. From this perspective, Yun Yen and Ayam were actually the same type of witch. It was just that one was an angel and the other was a demon. They were on opposite ends of the scale, but there was no difference in their lethality to men. Thinking of this, Ryuto couldn't help but pick up his girlfriend's pillow from the bed and put it in front of his nose to smell it. Then, his whole body trembled, looking like a living gentleman. Of course, this was purely out of curiosity. He wanted to find out what elements were involved in the smell of hormones. There was absolutely no hint of perversion in it. Absolutely not, probably not. Ah, you came in so quickly. Why are you holding my pillow? When Ryuto was smelling the pillow like a fool, Yun Yen also walked in from the main door. Then, she looked at his actions and asked in confusion. Ahem, aren't you going to change clothes? Hurry up, I can't wait. In order to cover up his gentlemanly behavior just now, Ryuto hurriedly showed an excited look. That's true. Then you wait here for a while, I'll be right there, hee hee. After throwing a flirtatious look, Yun Yen walked toward the large cloakroom next to the room. At this time, there were a lot of cosplay costumes there. It made people sigh that it's good to be rich, and it's even better to have a rich girlfriend. Oh, what will senior sister Yun Yen wear in a while? It's really exciting. When Yun Yen ran to the cloakroom to change clothes, Ryuto was lying on her soft bed and rolling around, looking like a pure young man who had never been on a woman's bed. Speaking of cosplay costumes, what do you like the most? For Ryuto, he should like maids the most. That kind of job of serving people with cute girls and costumes can really arouse endless fanciful thoughts of men. Coincidentally, senior sister Yun Yen, who walked out of the cloakroom 10 minutes later, was dressed in a very seductive female outfit. Servant. Poser. Is this an angel? Did the maid angel come? When Yun Yen walked out with a cold expression, Ryuto couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. At this time, Yun Yen was wearing a standard black and white maid costume. The black inner shirt tightly wrapped around her slender body. The white lace skirt only reached her thighs, and there was a big bow on the waist that emphasized the girl's slender waist. Originally, a maid costume was one of the elements of Mo. At this time, Yun Yan's maid costume was short, and a pair of white halter stockings swayed her legs, giving people a feeling of shining white. What's more, from the bottom of the skirt to the top of the halter stockings, it just so happened to expose a piece of snow-white skin, as well as the outline of the thighs that was wrapped by the stockings. It can be said to be a perfect, absolute domain. Absolute territory referred to the space between the girl's knee-length socks and short skirt where one could vaguely see her thighs. That vaguely discernible beautiful skin allowed one to see their dreams, so it was called a sacred and inviolable territory. Originally, Yun Yen's figure was the tallest among the three girls, so her legs were naturally the longest. Coupled with the white halter stockings and the short skirt absolute domain, it made people want to lie down on the spot and become the carpet under her feet. Beautiful, beautiful, really beautiful. At this moment, senior sister Yun Yen was wearing a set of maid attire. Her cloud-like brown hair was tied into a neat high ponytail. Coupled with the cold and arrogant expression on her face, it really made people unable to stop themselves from looking at her. Wait. Why does the maid have such an expression? It seems like she treats the master as trash. Generally speaking, maids are not submissive. They will do whatever they are told to do. Why is Yun Yen acting as a maid like this? Just when Ryuto looked at the maid Yun Yen with a puzzled look, she frowned and said sternly, "Hey! You, what are you doing lying on Miss Bed? Pervert!" Logically speaking, this is Yun Yen's own room, and the bed is also her own bed, but Yun Yen said that it is Miss Bed. So that's the case. Is it such a setting? Her current maid role is playing the maid of Yun Yen in Tsukumi. Unlike Colored Glaze, Yun Yen did not have a personal maid following her. So at this time, Miss put herself in a role similar to 16 Knights in dancing costume and began to angrily scold the stinky man who was lying on Miss' bed. Union's acting was not bad. At least he could feel her momentum of looking at men as trash. From a certain point of view, it was really similar to dancing costume. Since Yun Yen wanted to put on an act, then Long Do naturally would not refuse to accompany her. So he sneered and said, with my relationship with your miss, I can go to her bed if I want to. Even if your miss is on the bed, I will do it without hesitation. When he said, without hesitation, Ryuto slightly curled his lips. Obviously, this sentence had a double meaning. After all, the word on had a deeper meaning. After hearing this sentence, the maid Union's face turned a little red, but she still angrily said, disgusting. Disgusting. You stinky men, all you think about is these messy things all day long. I don't want Miss to be sullied by you. As Yun Yen spoke, she put her hands on her waist and put on a superior posture while looking at Ryuto who was lying on Miss' bed. This kind of superior posture and her service profession as a maid produced a strange contrast. Well, how to put it, it would make the person who liked it feel very good. Coincidentally, Ryuto was the kind of person who liked it. Although he was not a masochist, who could reject such a beautiful and cute maid who looked at her master like he was trash? Thus, when he heard Yun Yan's words, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Then, he stretched out his hand and directly pulled this tsundere maid onto the bed. Chapter 265. Plop. Following this soft sound, the cute little maid was brought to the bed by the domineering extreme Dao young master. The moment she was pulled to the bed, the maid Yun Yen couldn't help but shout, Let go! Stinky man! I want revenge! Although I like your big miss, I also like you. Without waiting for the maid Yun Yen to finish her words, Ryuto whispered softly in her ear, and at the same time, he kissed her round earlobe. Oh! After being hit in the face by such a straightforward ball, Yun Yen suddenly became soft, and her whole body became soft. So she also obediently fell into Ryuto's arms, smiled and said, You really know how to coax girls. Usually, you have a lot of sweet words for other girls. Occasionally, but the number of sweet words for you is definitely the most. Ha 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 ha. It seems like this is the case. Yun Yen also knew that Ryuto had two other women, but with the temperament of Colored Glaze and Dunia, they usually didn't play so much when they were with Ryuto. After being intimate for a while, Yun Yen slowly got up from the bed, pointed at her outfit and asked, Stop joking, what do you think of my outfit? Very good. Ryuto immediately gave a thumbs up, smiled and said, Especially the setting of the arrogant and poisonous maid and the white garter stockings, it's simply amazing. Gulp. Speaking of this, the dragon head couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, and looked at Union's legs wrapped in the long garter stockings. The so-called garter stockings were actually a kind of stockings. It was just that in the past, when stocking technology was not developed, nylon stockings without a corset design would easily slide down. Therefore, things like suspenders were developed. To put it bluntly, it was just a design to fix the stockings. Logically speaking, with the improvement of the design of stockings and the development of some small products similar to stocking glue, the situation of women slipping down when wearing stockings had decreased a lot. Therefore, garter stockings should also be retired from the stage of history. However, this did not happen. At some point, garter stockings became a symbol of femininity. Unlike stockings and pantyhose without suspenders, suspender stockings were like the straps behind a bra because of the two suspenders. They became a special prop that attracted people's interest. In this day and age, socks were not necessarily for wearing. They could be worn for use. After all, a woman's long and slender legs were the most attractive part of a man. Coupled with the two straight straps of the garter stockings, it was as if the straps were used as threads on the graceful thighs, making it easier for people to see the three-dimensional structure of the thighs. And the most important thing was that the straps of the garter stockings had a hint of going up, up, and up. It made people feel as if they could go up along the straps, and their consciousness would dive into the top of the garter stockings and go to the mysterious secret garden. Therefore, the legs wearing garter stockings were beautiful and had a certain suggestive effect. It could make people feel that the legs were very beautiful. If the legs were white and long, the bones and flesh were well proportioned, and the owner of the legs was a great beauty, then it would be even more beautiful. There was no doubt that Yun-Yen perfectly met the above characteristics, so Ryuto couldn't help but look at her legs wearing white garter stockings. This was a very normal situation. At this time, the maid was lying on the bed with her legs slightly bent, supporting her face with her elbows. This posture could perfectly show the curves of her body. After noticing Ryuto's gaze on her legs, Yun-Yen was not pretentious, but asked with a smile, "So you like this? Is this the so-called stocking fetish?" Is it? I can't say for sure. In short, I am attracted to it." Facing this question, Ryuto was a little embarrassed. After all, it was still a little embarrassing to be obsessed with legs wearing stockings. But Yun-Yen was more considerate than Ryuto. She actually stretched out her legs generously and signaled to Ryuto with her eyes that he could touch it if he liked. "Really? Can I really do this?" Looking at the pair of beautiful legs wearing white stockings in front of him, although Ryuto thought, "This is not good," in his heart, his hand honestly held Yun-Yen's slender jade foot and curiously played up and down. As early as when he was driving to the Tokyo Emperor Hotel, Ryuto had some strange thoughts about Yun-Yen's feet. Her moderately sized feet were very delicate. The shape of the ankle and instep were extremely beautiful. Coupled with the white stockings covering it, it made people want to hold it in their hands and play with it carefully. Now, Ryuto finally got what he wanted. This is Yun-Yen's feet? Not bad. It was not the first time Ryuto saw and touched a beauty's jade foot. In fact, he had seen or touched this part of his harem of 3 people. Dunia's feet were the smallest. One hand could almost wrap around it. The feeling of being small and exquisite was like a carefully made doll. Colored Glaze's feet were slightly bigger, but the shape was very delicate. The beautiful lines from the tip of the foot to the ankle gave endless fanciful thoughts. And because Yun-Yen's figure was the tallest and her body shape was also the mature type, her jade feet were naturally the largest among the 3. However, senior sister Yun-Yen's feet were still very beautiful. Beside the round and protruding ankle joint, there was a pair of slightly sunken ankle sockets, which maximized the bone aesthetic of the ankle. Coupled with the well-proportioned bone and flesh ratio, it was unforgettable for anyone who saw it for the rest of their life. Ryuto heard before that in some old gentleman countries, there was a beauty contest that specialized in the beauty of the ankle. If that kind of gentleman contest still existed, then Yun-Yen could definitely easily win the championship. Have you touched enough? I'm going to change into the next set of clothes. Just when Ryuto, the young gentleman, was sighing, "Good, good, good," while he reached out to admire Yun-Yen's feet and legs wrapped in stockings, Yun-Yen finally couldn't help but remind him. Although she knew that Ryuto liked a maid costume and white silk garter stockings, maid costume was only one of the cosplay costumes. There were dozens of clothes in the cloakroom waiting for Yun-Yen to change into. Ryuto had no choice but to let go of the beautiful leg and watch Yun-Yen walk toward the cloakroom. But this wasn't a bad thing, because not long after, Yun-Yen walked back in a white nurse uniform. This is not bad. Looking at Yun-Yen, who was wearing a nurse's skirt, a nurse's cap, and a pair of white pantyhose, Ryuto suddenly had the idea of asking her to give him an injection, or he could give her an injection himself. Just like this, the two played the nurse and patient game for a while. Yun-Yen then changed into the witch costume, policewoman costume, Lolita costume, flight attendant costume, and other common cosplay costumes. She also changed into some famous ACG characters' cosplay costumes. Every time she changed her clothes, Long Do would seriously comment on it. Then, he would comment on whether senior sister Yun-Yan's clothes matched her stockings, whether the stockings were too thick, and so on. Needless to say, only Yun-Yen was willing to play with Ryuto like this. If it was colored glaze or Dunia, Ryuto would have been kicked and beaten as soon as he stretched out his hand. When Yun-Yen finally excitedly tried on all the clothes, it was already the middle of the night. And when she tried on a bunch of clothes, she felt a little sweaty, so she ran to the bathroom to take a shower, changed into a nightgown, and walked out. Phew, today was really fun, too interesting. After coming out of the bathroom, Yunyan laughed while using the towel in her hand to dry her wet hair. Her long brown hair, which was usually soft and fluffy like a cloud, was now wet and clumped together. Long Do had never seen such a scene before. Although it was not the first time he saw a beauty coming out of the shower, the last time he saw it was Dunia drying her wet hair. When it came to displaying the charm of a woman, a lowly was not on the same level as a mature woman. Yunyan's posture when she came out of the bath was indeed much more beautiful. It made people clearly feel that she was a woman and not a girl. Dong dong, dong dong. Seeing Yunyan in a soft nightgown walking towards him, Ryuto felt his heart beating violently. Indeed, the normal Yunyan and the Yunyan who changed so many costumes were very attractive, but the current Yunyan in her nightgown displayed her charm to the extreme. Her bare feet, as white as jade, stepped on the carpet in the room. Her calves and thighs without stockings still looked flawless. From the soft silk nightgown, one could see large patches of white skin on her arms, back, and neck. Walla! Walla lala! When Yunyan came out of the bathroom and sat in front of the dressing table to dry her hair, Ryuto kept staring at her like an idiot who had never seen a woman before. As a matter of fact, it was indeed so. Beauties like Yunyan who possessed a fatal level of enticement to men were probably less than 5 in the current world. One of them was even a man-eating flower like Yongji. Looking and looking, when Yunyan finally dried her hair and walked towards the bed, Ryuto reacted and jumped up from the bed. He said awkwardly, "Sorry, it's late, I should go back." Because he was just engrossed in watching, Ryuto didn't react and now it was already this time. After all, now that Yunyan was ready to wash up and sleep, he was still in her room, which was more or less suspicious of being a hooligan. People can be romantic, but can't be dirty. This was Ryuto's principle. However, just as Ryuto stood up and was about to leave like a gentleman, Yunyan suddenly pushed him forward and directly pushed him onto the bed. Yunyan, you. Just seeing so many of my costumes and touching so many stockings of different thicknesses, do you feel a little uncomfortable? After pushing Long Do onto the bed, Yunyan also pounced on him. She revealed a charming smile that was different from her usual self as she whispered into his ear, "Do you want it? Tonight. It's okay." Chapter 266. Generally speaking, when a woman says, "Do you want it? If it's tonight, it's okay." When she says this, she probably didn't mean to ask if he wanted to eat supper tonight. Ryuto naturally understood what Yunyan meant. Otherwise, he wouldn't be naive, but really stupid. Speaking of which, among the harem trio, Yunyan and Ryuto's relationship was the most intimate, because Yunyan was the most daring. In the 3 stages of love, which were kiss, caress, and sleep together, the color glaze only reached A, Dunia didn't even reach A, and Yunyan even passed B. When Ryuto touched her feet and legs, Yunyan didn't refuse. Instead, she seemed to find it very interesting. Later on, when Ryuto boldly and shamelessly touched the pair of cute slimes, Yunyan didn't express any displeasure. That kind of charm that could cause the downfall of countries and cities combined with the mature figure of a big sister that was like a peach, exuding a fatal attraction. And what made this attraction even more terrifying was that Yunyan was the kind of person who was willing to take the initiative to be intimate with others. Just like now. Although she was a genuine pure girl, this didn't stop Yunyan from taking the initiative. Because her personality was like this, daring to try all kinds of new things, and also like to enjoy all kinds of enjoyment. Regarding the fact that he was pushed down by Yunyan, Ryuto felt his mind go blank for a moment, and at the same time, his breathing suddenly quickened. At this time, Yunyan had just finished showering. The strong smell of hormones on her body mixed with the fragrance of the shower gel, coupled with the soft silk nightgown, this beauty's charm was displayed to the extreme. What's more, this great beauty even asked, "Do you want it?" A question that couldn't possibly have a second answer, so it would be strange if he could resist. Thus, without even thinking, Long Do brought over a slave. He flipped over and placed Senior Yun Yen on the bed. Then, he propped up the pillow with his hand and looked at her eyes that carried a blurred expression. Yun Yen, can I really do it? But be gentle, I haven't done it before, I heard it's a bit painful at first. Okay, I'll be gentle. Finally, the day has finally arrived, I can finally become a real man. Looking at Yun Yen lying on the bed with a playful expression, Ryuto suddenly felt like crying. After mentally preparing himself, Ryuto slightly lowered his head, and planned to start this hot night with a passionate chirp. However, just as this pair of lovers was about to take a new step, a light knock came from Yun Yen's door. Damn! What the hell? Instantly, Ryuto's body bounced off Yun Yen's body and awkwardly sat to the side. Yun Yen also frowned slightly, and asked with an unhappy tone. Who is it? Allah, you're not asleep yet, right? It's Mom, I'm coming in. At this time, Yun Yen's mother, Suki Risen's voice came from outside the door. Mom. Why would she? Phew, no choice. Hearing her mom's voice, Yun Yen hurriedly lifted the blanket and signaled for Ryuto to hide inside, while she lay down beside Ryuto, picked up a book from the bedside table, and pretended to be reading on the bed, and then picked up the remote to open the door. Yun Yen's door was an electronic lock that could be opened remotely, so there was no need to get off the bed to open the door. 2 seconds after Ryuto hurriedly crawled under the blanket, Zhan Qin opened the door and walked in, walking towards Yun Yen's bedside. After coming to the bedside, Zhan Qin smiled and said to her daughter, Still reading? I hope I didn't disturb you. You can say that. Why did you suddenly come over? I went to Madame Kudo's place to have a tea party tonight, and it happened to be near here, so I couldn't be bothered to go back, and decided to stay here for a night to accompany my cute daughter. Saying this, a relaxed smile appeared on Zhen Qin's face, as if saying, Are you happy? Are you having a good time? If it was any other time, Yun Yen would definitely be very happy if her mom came over to accompany her. But today was different. Yun Yen was about to step onto a new level with her boyfriend, but who knew that Zhan Qin would suddenly come and mess things up, causing her to have a strange expression. As for Ryuto, who was hiding under the blanket, it was even more awkward. What's going on? What's going on? I was being intimate with my girlfriend in her room, but my mother-in-law suddenly came and blocked me in my girlfriend's blanket? This situation was very awkward for Ryuto, and also very scary. After all, he couldn't imagine what Zhen Qin's expression would be if she found out that he was hiding in her daughter's bed. But at this moment, something even scarier happened. As Zhen Qin spoke, she actually sat down on Yun Yen's bed and smiled. How about I sleep here with you tonight? We haven't slept together in a long time. Hiss. The moment she heard this, Yun Yen shivered, and Ryuto, who was hiding behind her, also shivered. The two could be said to be in sync. What a joke, sleep together. As long as Zhen Qin lifts the blanket, no one will be able to sleep tonight. This isn't good. After feeling the crisis, a drop of cold sweat fell from Yun Yen's smooth forehead, and she said awkwardly, Why isn't it good? Didn't we often sleep together before? That's true, but today I have a cold, and I'm afraid of infecting you. Achoo. In order to strengthen her persuasion, Yun Yen pretended to sneeze cutely. If it was any other time, Ryuto would definitely be attracted by the sound of the sneeze, but now he didn't have the mood to do so. Instead, he paid full attention to the second mother-in-law's actions. Please, don't come over. He didn't know if Ryuto's prayer was effective, or if Yun Yen's sneeze was quite realistic. When Zhen Qin heard that, she said, Then you should rest well tonight. I'll sleep in the guest room next door. I won't disturb you. After rubbing Yun Yen's head, Zhen Qin leisurely opened the door and walked to the guest room next door. Phew. Suddenly, Ryuto breathed a sigh of relief. He poked his head out of the blanket, reached out and hugged Yun Yen's slender waist, and said with a smile, This is really dangerous, I was almost caught, hee. Indeed, I didn't expect Mom to come back at this time. After holding Ryuto's hand, Yun Yen said regretfully, but it seems that we can't do it tonight. Mom is sleeping in the small guest room next door. If there is any noise, it will disturb her. Although the soundproofing of the Tsutsumi Rebetsuin room was good, after all, it was late at night, and the surroundings were very quiet. If the two of them did it in the room, it would be strange if Zhen Qin, who lived next door, couldn't hear it. But if they covered their mouths and didn't make any sound, the two of them wouldn't feel good enough. They would feel very sullen, so they might as well not do it. That's the only way. So miserable. Ryuto naturally knew this, so he also nodded bitterly, but the fire in his chest didn't go down. How to put it, in fact, since Yunyen changed her clothes, Ryuto had been very angry. Later, after Yunyen made it clear that she wanted to help him, Ryuto's fire burned even more vigorously. To use an exaggerated analogy, Ryuto was like a volcano that was about to erupt. If there was no vent, then he could only wait for the boiling magma inside to slowly calm down. Anyone who had experienced such a situation would know that this process was very unpleasant. It was like the feeling of being forced back halfway through a sneeze. Seeming to feel Ryuto's sullenness, Yunyen first pondered, and then said to Ryuto, who was about to get up and leave, "How about this? It's already so late, you should stay here tonight." But in my current situation, if I stay here, it's a bit torturous. If it was a normal day, being able to sleep in the same bed with Yunyen, even if it was just sleeping together, was a great enjoyment for Ryuto. But the problem was that now Ryuto's fire had been greatly aroused by her, and it was in the ultimate state of overclocking. Sleeping with her was not enjoyment, but torture. It was like a person who had been hungry for several days was placed in front of him, but the meat couldn't be eaten, and he could only sleep with the meat. Who could stand this? However, Yunyen whispered in his ear, "I know. Don't worry, I will help you solve it so that you can sleep peacefully." "What? Help me solve it? What do you mean?" Beep. Before Ryuto could react, Yunyen picked up the remote control on the bedside table and pressed the button to turn off the lights. The next moment, the room filled with the delicate fragrance of a young girl suddenly fell into darkness, and for a moment it became pitch black. Then, a rustling sound came from the bed. Ryuto felt the quilt suddenly moved, and a warm body lifted the quilt and went under. Yunyen. Just lie down. I read this method from a book. I don't know if it can be done. Anyway, let's give it a try. Book? Read it from a book. Give it a try? This is... Oh. Just when Ryuto didn't react to what Yunyen was saying, he suddenly felt his body heat up, and the action in the sixth last paragraph of chapter 95 was reproduced in this small quilt. So it's like this. Yunyen. Amazing. When he was enveloped by a feeling that he had never experienced before, Ryuto couldn't help but take a deep breath, and felt that his whole body fell into a bottomless abyss. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.